Welcome back. First of all, sorry for late video. I can't guarantee the continuous videos, but I will upload 50 chapters in single video, at least I will try. Let's continue. Fan favorite Necromancer of the Shadows. Chapter 11:11 Rattle. As the giant snake head, covered in eerie-looking green fire, poked out from behind the clouds and looked down at the Eldritch creatures, the Eldritch creatures felt their scalps tingling and all of them stopped moving. In this moment of short distraction, nearly 30,000 Eldritch creatures died under the bombardment of the blood-red lightning bolts that never stopped falling from the sky. At the same time, Drezoth, who was planted deep into the ground due to the sudden attack by the beginner-level rank 3 snake, was also struck by nearly 10 blood-red lightning bolts, and his aura dropped sharply due to the powerful lightning attack. Rattle, the beginner-level rank 3 snake, was a shadow undead that Evan had created after leaving the Tomb of the Ancient. Although he left most of his rank 3 shadow undeads with Elysia and Zorda on Earth to help them take care of Winterclaw's matter, he still brought some of them with him as he wasn't sure about what kind of danger he would face after entering the portal. Rattle just glanced at the thousands of Eldritch creatures who were panicking and running around while defending themselves from the red lightning bolts that were falling down from the sky like a punishment from the gods, and then shifted his purple burning eyes towards Drezoth, who had just emerged from the deep pit, with blood flowing from all over his body. Sparks of blood-red lightning were crackling inside his open wounds and creating a sizzling sound, making the Eldritch creature groan in pain. The eyes of Drezoth were bloodshot, and seeing how his legion was being slaughtered like pigs under the bombardment of blood lightning, he roared like a beast and shot towards Rattle while holding his giant hammer. Seeing Drezoth coming towards him, Rattle wasn't afraid of him and finally emerged from behind the clouds, revealing his nearly 2,000-meter-long snake body. At the same time, Rattle shook his tail, and the rattler at the end of his tail made a strange sound. As the sound of the rattler echoed in the surroundings, Drezoth's momentum immediately weakened. Although Drezoth's mind was shaken due to the sound created by the rattler, he still didn't back down and swung his hammer, greeting the giant black tail that was falling down from the sky. The hammer and the tail collided in midair, and, boom, a booming sound echoed across 1,000 kilometers of the area, and tens of thousands of Eldritch creatures who were below rank B immediately exploded into blood mist. The army formations that the Eldritch creatures had created to defend against the lightning bolts fell apart due to the sudden death of thousands of members who were maintaining the formation, and more Eldritch creatures died under the bombardment of lightning. The black lightning cloud in the sky was also shaken due to the impact generated by the collision between the two rank 3 core evolvers, but Albelu immediately stabilized it. Arg! Drezoth roared in fury when he saw more creatures die and started to desperately fight against Rattle. But Rattle was already at the limit of beginner level rank 3, and in his current situation, it became nearly impossible for Drezoth to gain the upper hand against him. While Albelu was bombarding the army with lightning bolts and Rattle was fighting against Drezoth, Evan's shadow clone moved on the battlefield with a deep frown on his face. Obviously, Evan hadn't sent his shadow clone just to steal the airship of the enemy. The reason he sent his clone was to collect the dead bodies of the Eldritch creatures so that he could create more shadow undeads for the upcoming war. The clone was ready to collect the bodies after Albelu killed thousands of Eldritch creatures in the first round of attack, but at that moment, he noticed something unusual. No matter whether it was the F-rank Eldritch creatures or a peak rank 2 Eldritch creature, any Eldritch creature who died under the lightning attack would turn into a dried corpse and then into dust as if their energy was absorbed by someone. Seeing this strange scene, Evan thought about the world blessing that Xaeltor had mentioned, but upon closer inspection, he was certain that the thing that was happening had nothing to do with the world blessing. Instead, all of these creatures were truly deadbanned, their bodies and souls were being absorbed by the world itself. This situation immediately reminded him of the world domain. When he was in the world domain, Evan still remembered that if anyone died in the world domain, the energy of their soul and body would be absorbed by the Tower of Ascension, and the way the dead bodies of the Eldritch creatures were disappearing was very similar to the situation in the world domain. This is an artificially created world, and seeing how it is working like the world domain, could it be that the world domain is also an artificial world and was created by someone? Evan thought, and he tried to put away some of the dead bodies inside his shadow storage, but unfortunately, the bodies didn't go inside his shadow storage as if they were still alive, and soon turned into dust. I wanted to collect some high-level bodies to make more shadow undeads, but it seems it won't work. The clone shook his head and sighed inwardly. Boom! At this moment, a loud booming sound suddenly echoed throughout the surroundings, and a dust cloud nearly 200 meters wide rose from the middle of the battlefield as if someone had dropped there from the sky with very powerful force. Crackle, crackle, dash 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 dash. At the same time, the moment the dust cloud rose, hundreds of blood-red lightning bolts crackled inside the black clouds and fell down from the sky, bombarding the dust cloud into smithereens. Evan looked towards the sky and saw Rattle looking at the dust cloud with his cold purple eyes. Seeing that Rattle was still in the sky, Evan's shadow clone immediately understood that it was Drezoth who had fallen from the sky, and from Drezoth's weakened aura, the clone was certain that the beginner-level rank 3 Eldritch creature was at his limit. Evan looked around and saw that, aside from a few powerful Eldritch creatures, most of the army had already died under the bombardment of lightning. Well, I wonder what kind of move those guys will make after this one-sided massacre. He muttered in a low voice and disappeared from his position, reappearing above the dust cloud where Drezoth was to confirm something about the world blessing that Zaltor had mentioned. Chapter 11-12 Racial Weapon, Part 1. The blood-red lightning continued to fall on the rising dust cloud when Evan's clone appeared above it. Using his spiritual senses, he saw that within the dust cloud, Drezoth was lying in the middle of a deep pit, his body torn in multiple places, with black blood oozing out like a flowing stream. The pig-headed Eldritch creature was desperately trying to escape from the pit, but every defensive measure he employed was instantly destroyed by the lightning, leaving him no chance of escape. About a minute later, Drezoth's aura dropped to its lowest point and his life force was on the verge of vanishing. Noticing that the rank 3 Eldritch creature was about to die, Evan signaled Albelu with his hand, and in an instant, the lightning bolts stopped falling into the deep pit. Instead, they targeted the remaining Eldritch creatures of the army who were scattered across the battlefield, trying their best to escape. Since the remaining Eldritch creatures were all defenseless and seriously injured, just one wave of lightning was enough to annihilate them completely, and with that lightning wave, other than Drezoth, all 200,000 Eldritch creatures who had come to fight Evan were killed in less than 3 minutes. Although Evan felt it was a pity that he didn't get any bodies to create more shadow undeads, he didn't dwell on it as he was more focused on confirming something important. As Albelu stopped unleashing lightning bolts on Drezoth, Evan waved his hand, and the dust cloud was blown away by a gust of wind, revealing the Eldritch creature's tattered figure lying in the middle of a nearly 10-meter wide and around 50-meter deep pit. Evan looked at Drezoth, who now resembled a charred humanoid pig covered in sparks of blood-red lightning, and activated his wind manipulation skill. As he used the skill, a powerful wind force erupted from the pit and hurled Drezoth's body high into the sky. Because the Eldritch creature was heavily injured, he couldn't control his body and continued to ascend high in the sky, when suddenly, a giant snake mouth filled with sharp fangs appeared in his path and bit down. Crunch! The sound of bones crunching and flesh tearing echoed across the silent battlefield as Rattle swallowed half of Drezoth's body, while the remaining half fell from the sky with black blood flowing like a fountain. Thud, thud! With a loud thud, the body of the pig-headed Eldritch creature crashed to the ground, twitching a few times before going still. At the same time, as the body stopped twitching, a strange force enveloped it, turning it to dust and making it disappear from the battlefield. Evan paid no attention to the half of the body that had dropped to the ground and vanished. Instead, his focus was on Rattle, who had swallowed half of Drezoth's body. With his senses, he could see the half of the body Rattle swallowed was struggling furiously inside his stomach. But Evan didn't care about that and instructed Rattle to return to his shadow storage, hoping that since half of Drezoth's body had already been absorbed by the world, the remaining half would be considered a dead object, allowing Rattle to take it inside his shadow storage. Once inside the shadow storage, Evan wouldn't have to worry about losing half of Drezoth's body. Even though the chances of turning someone into a shadow undead with just half of their body are very low, there was still a small possibility, and he wanted to see if he could succeed. Unfortunately, things didn't go as planned. When Rattle tried to enter the shadow storage, only half of his body was able to enter, while the remaining half containing Drezoth's body in its stomach couldn't enter. Evan's mouth twitched when he saw Rattle's long body twitching along with its tail, trying its best to squeeze into the shadow storage, and he shook his head. Not going to work, huh? He muttered in a low voice and ordered Rattle to spit out the Eldritch creature. The snake stopped trying to enter the shadow storage and spat out the slightly deformed body of the pig-headed Eldritch creature. And the moment he did, the half-body turned to dust as well. Evan looked at the place where Drezoth's body had turned to dust and waited for a few minutes, but even after waiting for more than 10 minutes, nothing happened. Looks like my guess was right. Not every Eldritch creature possesses the world blessing that allows them to come back to life. Zaltor introduced himself as the 4th general under the command of Emperor Velgath. If I am right, then other than the 3 generals who were ahead of Zaltor, only a few other important figures would have the world blessing. Evan said to himself with a thoughtful look on his face, and his expression relaxed a bit. The power of being able to come back to life after death was no joke, so Evan had already guessed that it would be impossible for all the Eldritch creatures to possess a power like that. Now that he had confirmed it, he was visibly relieved, because if all the creatures had the world blessing and could come back to life, it would have been nearly impossible for him to complete the task even with the help of his shadow undeads. Although my plan of creating more shadow undeads failed, I still achieved a good result. He thought as he looked at the sky, which was brightening with red and orange colors as the black lightning cloud faded away. Now, those people who were thinking about coming here must be in a pinch, worrying that the preparations they made might not be enough to take me down. The reason Evan decided to reveal one of his rank 3 shadow undeads and let Albelu destroy the entire army with just a single attack, even after knowing the 6th Legion had come here to test him, was to buy himself some more time. He was sure that those who sent the 6th Legion were watching everything, and after seeing the complete annihilation of the entire army, they must now be thinking that their previous preparations might not be enough to take him down. This would give him more time to reach rank 3. Now I have to try my best to reach rank 3 before they come here. Evan muttered in a low voice and looked into the distance. If I become a rank 3 before they arrive, then it's good. If not, then I can always use the void crystals, right? Chapter 11:13 Racial Weapon, Part 2. What do you think? After a full 5 minutes of silence, Ultharic asked Nithor in a serious voice. Nithor didn't answer immediately. He stared at Evan, who was sitting in the cave with narrowed eyes, and after thinking for a while, he spoke in a low voice. He is dangerous, much more dangerous than we thought. If it was another time and someone told him that a peak rank 2 core evolver is dangerous for them, Ultharic would have laughed in his face, because, for a beginner level rank 4 core evolver like him, killing a rank 2 core evolver is as easy as slapping away a fly. But this time, when he heard Nithor, he didn't refute and instead nodded his head. If it wasn't because I could feel his aura from the Mistral Orb, I would have thought that he was at least at the peak of rank 3, Ultharic, the bull-headed Eldritch creature said in a cold voice as his eyes flashed with murderous light. Previously, there were a total of 8 of those black creatures with him, including that black wolf, and if I am not wrong, all of them must be similarly as powerful as that black wolf. Nithor said, and a confused expression appeared on his face. But the question is, from where did that rank 3 monster that killed Drezoth come? We were monitoring him during this entire time, and we didn't even notice that snake until that monster showed himself. He must have called him when the screen suddenly turned dark for a moment when Drezoth had reached the forest, Ultharic said in a serious voice and continued. I don't know what is going on with that invader and if he has more powerful creatures just like that black snake, but we can't give him any more time. From his actions, it is clear that he is trying to break through to rank 3. He can already kill a peak rank 3 core evolver. If he advances to rank 3, he will pose a fatal threat not only to us but to the entire Azragoth world. Nithor finished Ultharic's sentence and nodded his head. Should we use the racial weapon to deal with him? Ultharic fell into deep thought when he heard Nithor, and after a moment of hesitation, he asked in a low voice. Do you think His Majesty will agree? He is just a rank 2 core evolver, so I don't think he will allow us to use the racial weapon to deal with him. Give it a try before deciding anything. The construction of the world passage is currently at a critical moment. Do you think it is a coincidence that the invader appeared here at this time? Nithor spoke in a serious voice. You mean? Ultharic's bull-like eyes narrowed when he heard Nithor. Yes, I think he must be here to destroy the world passage. And since he dared to come here, he must have something to lean on that can help him deal with the world passage. If we don't take care of him, he may mess up all the work that we did in the past hundreds of years. Not only that, considering the power he has shown so far, it will be very difficult for us to kill him. Even if he can't fight against us directly, he can easily escape with the help of those black monsters. If we want to kill him without giving him a chance to escape, we would have to make many preparations in that area, which would take at least 3 or 4 days, and we can't afford to give him that much time. Ultharic's face turned ice cold when he heard Nithor, and looking at Evan in the water bubble, killing intent flashed in his eyes. I will immediately ask His Majesty for permission to use the racial weapon. Good, don't forget to tell him about what happened to the 6th Legion and how he can call powerful monsters for his aid, Nithor said before Ultharic left. I don't think I need to tell him anything. With his control over the world, I am sure he already knows about what happened there, Ultharic said with a shake of his head and flew towards the Red Castle in a hurry. Nithor watched Ulthuric flying towards the red castle, then his eyes shifted to the water bubble that was showing Evan sitting in the cave. He didn't even take any action himself, yet only 2 of his summoned monsters destroyed an entire legion. Nithor muttered in a low voice and shook his head. I don't know why, but I have a feeling that if we don't take care of him as soon as possible, he will turn into a calamity that even His Majesty won't be able to stop. After leaving Nithor's side, Ulthuric soon landed in front of the red castle, but he didn't enter the castle and stood outside without saying anything. Time continued to pass, and before he knew it, more than 15 hours had gone by. Normally, 15 hours was a very short period of time for Ulthuric, who had been alive for more than 10,000 years, but at this moment, Ulthuric felt those 15 hours were as long as his entire life. His Majesty is still not answering. It seems the connection with the world passage is really at a critical moment. He thought to himself and hesitated as to whether he should call out Emperor Velgath. Just when Ulthuric was hesitating, a voice finally rang out inside his head. Are you here because of what happened to the 6th Legion? Ulthuric's eyes lit up when he heard the voice and he responded in a respectful voice. Yes, Your Majesty, Ulthuric said and told him about his talk with Nithor earlier. Emperor Velgath was silent after hearing Ulthuric. The bull-headed Eldritch creature didn't rush when Emperor Velgath didn't speak and waited patiently. Around 5 minutes later, Emperor Velgath finally spoke. You are right. I just checked and he is indeed very close to breaking through to rank 3 and should be able to take the final step in 2 or 3 days. Ulthuric remained silent hearing Emperor Velgath and waited for his command. After a few seconds of silence, Ulthuric heard a low sigh and the voice of Emperor Velgath rang out inside his head. Very well Ulthuric, you have my permission to use the racial weapon. Ulthuric's eyes lit up when he heard this and he bowed respectfully. Thank you, Your Majesty, I won't disappoint you, he said and immediately left from there. Chapter 11-14 Void Territory, Part 1. Ha, even a rank 4 demon is disappointing, Valerie said with a sigh as she looked at Zorda, who was lying lifelessly on the floor as if he were dead. After hearing you say that you were powerful enough to destroy the earth with just a single attack, I thought you were a big shot, but it turns out you are nothing special. After looking at Zorda for a few seconds, Valerie glanced at Elysia, who was standing some distance away and feeling Valerie's gaze on her. Elysia shivered like a frightened rabbit and backed away from her. Seeing Elysia's trembling figure, Valerie sighed once again as if she was disappointed, but she couldn't conceal the haughty look in her eyes as if she were a queen and Elysia was just a mere peasant. I will let you guys off this time, but you better think 5 times before you 2 decide to challenge me again, Valerie said in a cold voice and threw away the joystick she was holding. How dare these mere peasants, who are still green in the world of video games, challenge me? They are simply courting death, she thought with an emotionless look on her face and sat down on the sofa. I wonder when the master of these peasants will come back. Since he's been living in Utopia for quite some time, he must have many good things in his possession. I will beat him in the games as well, and as a winning prize, I will ask for some high-level items that can instantly increase my rank. Valerie muttered to herself and smiled like a roadside villain who was planning to rob candy from a 5-year-old kid. Seeing Valerie smiling strangely, Elysia and Zorda looked at each other and both of them could see fear in each other's eyes. It had been 3 days since Evan entered the portal, and for the past 3 days, both of them had been tormented by Valerie. At first, when they started playing video games to relieve their boredom, Valerie was very humble and didn't even dare to speak rudely to Elysia and Zorda, knowing both of them were powerful enough to pinch her to death with just their fingers. But after playing games for 3 continuous days and defeating them hundreds of times, Valerie finally lost touch with reality and started to think that since she could defeat them in games, she could defeat them in real life as well and was infected by Queen Syndrome. On the other hand, after being defeated by Valerie hundreds of times, Zorda and Elysia lost all of their confidence and didn't have the courage to say anything to her, so they could only listen to her harsh words. All in all, because of not playing in moderation, these 3 people lost their minds. Fortunately, they were not ordinary people and their minds were far stronger than those of normal people, so after sitting in silence for a while, their mental exhaustion began to heal and all 3 of them started to regain some of their sanity, coming back to reality. As their mind was healing, the entire earth suddenly trembled, and this sudden danger urged their bodies to heal their minds even faster, making them return to normal in just a few seconds. After regaining their senses, the 3 of them didn't care about the shaking earth. Instead, they looked at each other. Elysia and Zorda's eyes settled on Valerie, who was still sitting on the sofa with a haughty look on her face, and the atmosphere turned awkward. The haughty look on Valerie's face slowly disappeared, and seeing Elysia and Zorda staring at her, an embarrassed expression took its place. Zorda and Elysia used their spiritual senses, and after seeing that the portals from where the Glassifern people had come were reacting, a cold light flashed in their burning purple eyes. They exchanged glances, and the next second, before Valerie could react, she was grabbed by Elysia, and the previous queen found herself flying towards the portal from where Shaldic had emerged. "Madam, is there any problem with the portals?" Valerie asked Elysia in a very humble voice, as if she was afraid of getting beaten to death by her. "Hey," Elysia sneered upon hearing Valerie's humble voice and didn't bother to reply. Cold sweat appeared on Valerie's forehead when she heard Elysia's sneering voice, and she started to get a very bad feeling. Soon, Elysia brought Valerie to Antarctica, where the portal was located, and upon sensing the powerful energy fluctuations coming from the portal, Valerie was certain that the earth's shaking was related to this. "My queen, some royal guests are coming here to meet you. This humble peasant needs to go back to the fields to water the crops, so please entertain them well on your own," Elysia said in a respectful voice, and before Valerie could react, she threw her down from the sky and flew away. "Madam, forgive me, please don't leave me alone," Valerie screamed in a desperate voice, but Elysia paid her no mind and soon disappeared from sight. Thud. With a loud thud, Valerie dropped onto the cold ice, and soon a powerful aura erupted from the portal, making her body shiver. Valerie looked behind her and saw a 3-meter-tall wolf, covered in snow-white fur with light blue eyes, emerging from the portal and looking at her with hungry eyes. "Well, foo *k." Valerie cursed herself for losing touch with reality earlier and immediately stood up, running away from the wolf while shouting for help. The wolf watched Valerie run and without hesitation, chased after her. While Valerie was running for her life, in the Azragoth world, 4 giant airships moved rapidly in a certain direction. In the airship at the forefront, Uthuric and Nithor sat with indifferent expressions on their faces. In Uthuric's hands, there was a black staff with a purple gem embedded at the top of it. Looking at the staff in his hands, a small smile appeared on Uthuric's bull-like indifferent face, and he closed his eyes. Meanwhile, in a cave located in the middle of a forest, Evan looked at the 10 crystals in front of him, and he finally made a decision. Chapter 11:15 Void Territory, Part 2. In the cave, Evan looked at the 10 dark purple crystals in front of him with a pondering look on his face. 6 of the 10 crystals in front of him were the size of a fingernail and were low-level void crystals. 3 of the crystals were twice that size, indicating they were mid-level void crystals, and the last dark purple crystal was nearly the size of a fist, a high-level void crystal. While leaving the Tomb of the Ancient, Evan had found a total of 6 low-level, 3 mid-level, and 2 high-level void crystals. Since he initially thought it would take him a long time to increase the rank of his core to the peak of rank 2, he had decided to place one of the high-level void crystals inside the evolution space of the Rune of Evolution to further evolve it into a perfect level space and void crystal. But he didn't expect that in the Magmara Kingdom, he would obtain the miasma conversion skill, which helped him increase the rank of his core to the peak of rank 2 very quickly. A high-level void crystal could increase his understanding of void energy by 5%, a mid-level one by 3%, and a low-level one by 1%. All in all, the 10 crystals in front of him could increase his understanding of void energy by 20%. Evan glanced at his status window and thought for a moment. Current understanding of the conceptual energy of void, 68.00% at Novelban at. He was still 7% away from his target of 75%, and knowing he didn't have much time left, he had decided to use the crystals after reaching 70%. Unfortunately, the Eldritch creatures reacted faster than he expected, and now he didn't have much time left. His black eyes flashed with void energy as he looked ahead. His gaze penetrated the endless void until it landed on 4 airships heading toward him at an astonishing speed. "They will be here in less than half an hour," he muttered in a low voice and sighed inwardly. Although Evan was very clear about the process of creating his illusionary world, it would still take him some time to do so. Even if he reached the 75% mark, he wouldn't be able to instantly create his illusionary world, as it takes at least 5 or 6 days to fully form an illusionary world. However, Evan had something that could greatly shorten the time he needed to create his illusionary world, and it could make his void zone even more powerful. He glanced inside his shadow storage, and his eyes fell on a wooden box engraved with a preservation formation. With a thought, the wooden box inside his shadow storage opened, and a dark orange fruit, burning with golden fire as if it were a bright sun, appeared in front of his eyes. "The Solarian sunfruit that I got in the Tomb of the Ancient can temper the illusionary world and reduce the time I need to create it. At the same time, it can give my zone the characteristics of the cosmic solar flame." With the addition of the cosmic solar flame, the power of my void zone will reach a completely different level. He muttered to himself and took a deep breath. However, even with the help of the Solarian Sunfruit, it will take me around 10 hours to create my illusionary world, so I need to delay those Eldritch creatures for a while. As Evan spoke, he picked up a low-level void crystal and began refining it. As he refined the crystal, it turned into dust, and soon information about void energy flooded his mind. Due to his high spiritual power, it only took a few seconds for Evan to digest all the information and his understanding reached 69%. He didn't stop after reaching 69% and picked up another low-level void crystal. In just a minute, he refined a total of 5 low-level void crystals out of 6, and his understanding reached 72%. After reaching the 72% mark, he didn't use the remaining low-level crystal. Instead, he picked up a mid-level one and began refining it. Refining the mid-level crystal was harder than refining the low-level ones. As the large amount of information about void energy flooded his mind, Evan felt a mild headache and his eyebrows furrowed slightly. Although it was easy to increase his understanding of void energy using the void crystals, this method put a great burden on his mind. If it weren't for his high spiritual power and powerful soul, it would have been impossible for him to refine so many void crystals simultaneously. Since he had just increased his understanding of void energy by 5% using the low-level void crystals, his mind was a bit exhausted, so it took him around 10 minutes to fully digest the information from the mid-level crystal. As he fully digested the information and his understanding hit the 75% mark, Evan felt an invisible wall blocking his path, as if he couldn't increase his understanding of void energy any further until he created his illusionary world. Evan was already aware of this, so he wasn't surprised and put the remaining 4 void crystals back inside his shadow storage. After putting away the void crystals, he once again looked into the distance and confirmed that the army of Eldritch creatures would reach him in about 10 minutes. He also estimated their numbers and found that there were around 1 million Eldritch creatures aboard the 4 airships, which left him speechless as he hadn't expected them to bring 1 million creatures to deal with just one person like him. But even after realizing that around 1 million Eldritch creatures, including 2 rank 4s, were coming towards him, he didn't panic. Instead, his eyes started to glow with purple void energy. In the airship, Eldrich sat with his eyes closed while Cthoron watched a floating water bubble in front of him, which showed Evan's figure sitting in the cave. Suddenly, Cthoron saw Evan raise his head and look directly at him as if he could see him across the vast distance of thousands of kilometers. Cthoron narrowed his eyes when he saw this and felt something was wrong. But before he could comprehend anything further, the bubble in front of him turned dark as if it had been plunged into an endless black void, and at the same time, his instincts began to scream at him that he was moving towards a dangerous area. Chapter 11:16 Void Territory, Part 3. Cthoron felt an uneasy sensation growing deep within his heart, but he couldn't pinpoint the source of this discomfort. Is it because of him? He muttered quietly as he stared at the water bubble in front of him, which was now pitch black as if it had been cast into an endless void. He took a few deep breaths to suppress the uneasiness gnawing at him and glanced at Eldrich from the corner of his eye, and upon seeing the black staff in Eldrich's hand, his expression relaxed slightly. Even if something is wrong, as long as we use this, it won't be difficult to kill him. Cthoron reassured himself before waking Eldrich, who was sitting with his eyes closed. Eldrich frowned when Cthoron suddenly disturbed him, but after noticing the pitch-black bubble in front of him, which was no longer showing Evan's movements, he narrowed his eyes. He must have somehow discovered that we are coming for him and might be planning to run away, Eldrich said in a cold voice, though he wasn't particularly worried about Evan fleeing as they had already prepared for such a possibility. Have you sealed the area already? Cthoron asked upon hearing Eldrich's suspicion. Why do you think I was sitting with my eyes closed? You didn't really think I was sleeping, did you? Eldrich retorted. Do you need to keep your eyes closed to use that thing? Cthoron asked in a surprised tone, eyeing the black staff in Eldrich's hands. He had only heard a few things about the racial weapon and had never used it himself, so he wasn't familiar with its functions. Not exactly, Eldrich replied calmly as he continued to gaze at the dark bubble in front of him. But all of this thing's functions require a vast amount of energy, and if you focus all your attention on it, you can reduce the energy consumption to some extent. Using the world blessing as a medium, I have already sealed the entire area where that invader is staying. Even if he breaks through to rank 3, he won't be able to escape from there. I see. Cthoron nodded with a look of understanding on his face and asked in a low voice. So, how do you plan to deal with him? Do you intend to use the racial weapon directly, or do you want to kill him without it? Why do you think we brought over 1,000,000 soldiers with us? Eldrich rolled his bull-like eyes at Cthoron's question. Although we can kill him directly by using the racial weapon's killing function, I want to avoid that if possible. Once it's used, the racial weapon will enter a cooldown state, and we won't be able to use it for the next 10 years. 10 years isn't a long time. If you ask me, I think we should use the killing function right away. I don't know why, but that invader is giving me a very uneasy feeling, Cthoron replied in a concerned voice. Eldrich didn't mock or dismiss Cthoron's suggestion as he knew there must be a reason for Cthoron's anxiety, but after a moment of thought, he still shook his head. Let's first try to kill him by normal means. If that doesn't work, we can always resort to the racial weapon. At worst, we'll lose some soldiers, but it's better than putting the racial weapon into a cooldown state. Why are you so reluctant to put the racial weapon into a cooldown state? Cthoron asked in a puzzled voice. For beings like them, who had lived for tens of thousands of years, 10 years was not a long time. Eldrich was about to answer Cthoron's question when suddenly, Cthoron thought of something and his eyes narrowed. Is it because of the world passage? Eldrich nodded upon hearing Cthoron and spoke in a low voice. The killing function of the racial weapon can directly eliminate even a peak rank 5 core evolver. If something goes wrong with the world passage, it will be our trump card. So if possible, I'd rather not use it to deal with just a mere rank 2 core evolver. Cthoron didn't say anything in response after hearing Eldrich and simply nodded his head. Around 5 minutes later, the endless forest, filled with tall gray-colored trees, finally came into their view. However, upon seeing the forest where Evan was staying, Cthoron and Eldrich's eyes contracted to the size of needles. What is that? Eldrich muttered in a deep voice as he gazed at the center of the forest, where a black-purple colored energy bubble, nearly 200 meters high and around 100 kilometers in diameter, stood. The black-purple energy bubble was situated in the middle of the forest, and within it, thousands of white dots twinkled like stars as if a world of its own existed inside the bubble. Although the bubble appeared transparent, it was shrouded in black mist from within, and even though Eldrich and Cthoron were rank 4 core evolvers, they couldn't see what was inside. A serious expression appeared on both Cthoron and Eldrich's faces as they observed the strange bubble that covered nearly 100 kilometers of the forest, and before the airship could reach it, both of them left and flew toward it on their own. As Cthoron entered the forest's territory, he felt as if he had passed through a layer of space invisible to the naked eye, but his expression remained unchanged because he knew it was the invisible space barrier created by Eldrich using the racial weapon to prevent Evan from escaping. In just a few seconds, they reached the middle of the forest, and upon taking a closer look at the black-purple bubble, a look of disbelief appeared on their faces. How is this possible? This. Eldrich stared at the bubble in front of him, unable to find words. Cthoron was also shocked as he examined the bubble closely, but he tried to remain calm and cautiously pushed one hand inside the bubble. As if his hand were passing through an invisible layer of space, it easily penetrated the bubble. However, instead of feeling relieved that he could enter, Cthoron's expression turned solemn and he quickly withdrew his hand. It's truly incredible. That guy actually pulled this area of the forest into void space and completely severed its connection with the Velgath world, he said in a low voice, staring ahead with a stunned expression. Hearing Cthoron's words, Eldrich took a few deep breaths to steady himself and said in a deep voice. No wonder we couldn't monitor him anymore. That guy is basically no longer in the Velgath world. As Eldrich spoke, a sudden realization struck him and his face turned grim. Since he severed this area's connection from the Velgath world, doesn't that mean? He spoke and looked at Cthoron. Sensing Eldrich's gaze, Cthoron nodded and replied in a cold voice. I don't know what kind of ability he used, but he pulled that entire area into void space, separating it from the Velgath world. If we go in there and die, we won't be able to revive using the world blessing because that area is no longer part of Velgath world. Chapter 11-17 Void Territory, Part 4. I don't know what kind of ability he used, but he pulled that entire area inside the void space, separating it from the Velgath world. If we go in there and die, we won't be able to revive using the world blessing because that area is no longer part of Velgath world. When Eldrich heard Cthoron's words, his bull-like face contorted with anger and a murderous look flashed in his eyes. He stared at the black-purple bubble, which was filled with thousands of small twinkling stars, and took a deep breath. He is just a rank 2 core evolver. A skill that can separate such a large area from the original world and pull it inside the void must be very energy consuming. I refuse to believe that he can maintain it for a long time, the bull-headed Eldritch creature said in a cold voice and signaled the 4 airships that reached the outer area of the forest to begin their descent. Cthoron paid no attention to the soldiers who had started disembarking the airships. Instead, he asked another question to Eldrich. What if he is planning to break through to rank 3 using this thing as a protective cover? Impossible. Eldrich immediately shook his head. You also know that it takes a few days for a person to successfully break through from rank 2 to rank 3. If he wants to reach rank 3, he will need to maintain this ability for a few days, which is simply imp. That invader is not normal, Eldrich. Cthoron interrupted Eldrich midway and spoke in a serious voice. Have you forgotten? He has already killed more than 200,000 Eldritch creatures, including Cthoron and Drezoth. Do you think he is foolish enough to create this thing just to waste his energy? Eldrich frowned when he heard Cthoron's serious voice but didn't refute him as he knew he was right. So, what do you think we should do? He asked after a moment of silence. Isn't it obvious? Cthoron said in a cold voice, looking at the soldiers behind him who were disembarking the airships. Create a few small teams of soldiers who are good at hiding and gathering information and let them go in there. Although I don't know what that invader is planning to do, I also agree with you that he can't maintain this kind of ability for a long time. If he wants to hide from us, he will definitely try to kill the people who enter, but in order to do so, he will have to consume even more energy. As long as he runs out of energy and this area disappears or our people who enter find his location, it will become very easy for us to deal with him. Eldrich thought about Cthoron's suggestion for a moment and nodded his head. All right, let's send Cthoron along with some other soldiers. He is best when it comes to gathering information. Even if he encounters something dangerous inside, he should be able to escape and bring back some information. By the way, what about those black monsters? It will be difficult, foe. They don't need to fight against those black monsters. Their task is to find the location of that invader, not deal with those black monsters. Cthoron said before Eldrich could finish speaking. Eldrich was silent after hearing Cthoron and only spoke after a few seconds. You really like to interrupt me midway, huh? Cthoron shrugged his shoulders when he heard Eldrich and walked towards the soldiers who were still disembarking the airships. Around 10 minutes later, 4 teams of Eldritch creatures, each containing 10 people, stood in front of Eldrich and Cthoron. In front of the 4 teams stood a 1.5 meter tall Eldritch creature who was shrouded in black mist and looked as if he didn't have a physical body. The creature had the aura of a mid-level rank 3 core evolver, but this aura was very peculiar, seeming to merge with the world itself. Without looking at the Eldritch creature with their own eyes, sensing his presence would be nearly impossible for people. Cthoron, do you understand what you have to do? Cthoron asked in a cold voice. Rest assured, my lord, I will try my best to complete the task. The figure shrouded in black mist spoke in an emotionless voice. Good, go ahead and remember, if you encounter powerful black monsters, you don't need to fight them to death. Simply evade them and continue searching for that invader, Eldrich said and tossed a glass bottle filled with black, blood-like liquid towards Cthoron. Cthoron caught the glass bottle and put it away inside his storage ring. In the next second, his figure turned into black smoke and merged with the 40 Eldritch creatures who stood in 4 teams. Once Cthoron disappeared, the 4 teams did not waste any time and walked toward the black-purple bubble. Coming in front of it, no one hesitated, and all 40 of them entered without stopping. All 4 teams entered the bubble from the same location, but once inside, each team found they couldn't sense the presence of the other teams anymore, which means all of them were sent to different locations after entering the energy bubble. The area inside the bubble was surrounded by darkness, with no light in sight. Cthoron, a peak rank 2 Eldritch creature and the leader of one of the 4 teams, quickly noticed the separation of the teams, but despite the unsettling situation, he didn't panic and immediately ordered his 9 teammates to stay in formation, ensuring they covered all their blind spots to avoid any surprise attacks. At least we can leave anytime we want. Cthoron muttered to himself as he tested their ability to exit from the spot where they had entered, and after confirming they could indeed leave, he sighed in relief. After confirming they could leave the energy bubble, the Eldritch creature instructed his teammates to move forward cautiously. As they advanced, Cthoron couldn't help but feel a sense of awe. As one of the top fighters, he was well aware that their mission was to deal with someone similar in power, another peak rank 2 individual. Yet, this same person had created the energy bubble they were now inside. Just what kind of monster he is to create such an ability while still at the peak of rank 2? Cthoron wondered as he surveyed the pitch-black space surrounding them. After moving inside the energy bubble for 5 minutes, Cthoron suddenly felt a strong sense of danger and immediately halted. Be careful, he warned his teammates in a low voice, his gaze fixed ahead. As Cthoron and his team looked forward, a few glowing red dots appeared in their vision. But in just a few seconds, the number of glowing dots reached nearly 1,000, and they realized the red dots were actually glowing eyes. There are so man, Arg. One of Cthoron's teammates, Rael, was stunned upon realizing that the hundreds of glowing red dots were eyes. But before he could fully express his shock, a knife was suddenly plunged into his throat. Hearing Rael's scream, Cthoron was shocked and quickly turned around. But upon turning around, he couldn't help but gasp in horror as he saw the one who had killed Rael was actually another of his own teammates. Chapter 11:18 Void Territory, Part 5 Zalthar, you, Cthoron and the other team members were shocked when Zalthar suddenly plunged a poison-coated knife into Rael's throat, instantly killing him. Thud. With a loud thud, Rael's body dropped to the ground, his face still showing a look of disbelief as a pool of black blood formed around him. The sound of the corpse hitting the ground snapped Cthoron and the others back to their senses, and they turned to look at Zalthar with murderous eyes. You bastard, how dare you kill my brother? A skinny Eldritch creature with a face resembling that of a lizard roared in anger and slashed with his long cleaver. But to the shock of Cthoron and the other team members, the skinny Eldritch creature didn't attack Zalthar. Instead, he shifted his attack at the last moment, striking a tall Eldritch creature standing beside him. The tall Eldritch creature didn't expect the skinny one to attack him, especially while he was screaming at Zalthar, so he wasn't able to react in time and his body was cleanly split into two under the sharp cleaver. Cthoron and the remaining 5 Eldritch creatures were once again stunned when they saw this, and instantly, they all moved away from each other, fearing they might face the same fate as the tall Eldritch creature if they stood near each other. Zalthar, Karzel, what the hell are you two doing? Cthoron roared in a furious voice after backing away, and without giving them any chance to explain, he immediately took action and attacked with his spear. Cthoron didn't want to kill them before understanding what was going on, so he aimed for their feet, trying to immobilize them. But in the next second, the eyes of all the Eldritch creatures contracted to the size of needles because just as Cthoron's attacks were about to hit their feet, Zalthar and Karzel dropped to the ground, bringing their heads directly into the path of the attack. They offered no defense against the sharp spear, and it was already too late for Cthoron to stop his attack. As a result, the sound of flesh tearing and bones cracking rang out and the heads of Zalthar and Karzel exploded like watermelons. The faces of Cthoron and the others turned deathly pale at the sight of such a strange scene, and their bodies trembled in fear. Cthoron stood with a look of disbelief and shock on his face, unable to comprehend what was happening. Chatter, chatter, dash 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 dash. At that moment, amid the endless darkness and the eerie silence that surrounded them, the sound of bones chattering echoed from all directions. When Cthoron and the other Eldritch creatures looked around, they saw thousands of skeletons with glowing red eyes walking toward them in a creepy manner. Combined with the strange behavior of their teammates, the sight of thousands of skeletons approaching from all directions only heightened the fear in the Eldritch creatures. Could it be that everything that happened just now is related to them? Cthoron tried to remain calm and muttered in a low voice, but looking at the skeletons, he couldn't understand how they had made Zalthar and Karzel kill their own teammates. We need to get out and inform Lord Uthuric about this. Unable to find the reason behind the strange behavior of his teammates, Cthoron immediately made up his mind and decided to retreat. He looked closely at the skeletons and, after assessing their levels, sighed in relief. All of these skeletons are not very high level, so as long as we don't lose our minds like Zalthar and Karzel and attack each other, it shouldn't be difficult to escape from here, Cthoron said, and ordered his remaining 5 teammates to retreat. Because of what happened with Zalthar and Karzel earlier, all of them maintained a certain level of distance from each other, fearing that they might suddenly be attacked by their own comrades. Using his high agility, Cthoron quickly reached the front of some B-rank skeletons blocking his path and struck them with his spear, intending to turn them into bone powder with his overwhelming power. But to Cthoron's shock, even after being struck by his spear, which could easily kill even a peak rank 1 core evolver, the B-rank skeletons merely took a few steps back before suddenly jumping at him, grabbing his arms and legs. What? Cthoron was stunned when his feet and hands were grabbed by the B-rank skeletons, and before he could react, the hundreds of skeletons surrounding him also jumped at him, grabbing his body just like the B-rank skeletons had. Cthoron's face turned red with shame at being caught by such low-level skeletons, and he roared in anger, "Get away from me!" A powerful aura burst out from Cthoron's body, and all the skeletons grabbing him were pushed away. But to his shock, he found that the skeletons were still completely intact, with no damage on their white bones. What the? Cthoron wasn't able to finish his sentence as his body was once again grabbed by the skeletons. The Eldritch creature was about to attack once more, but at that moment, swish, a sharp light suddenly flashed around Cthoron's neck, a fountain of black blood erupted and his head rolled high into the sky. As his head fell from the sky, Cthoron saw his headless body still being grabbed by the skeletons, and behind his headless body stood Kryl, one of his teammates who slit his own neck after killing him. Just what the foo *k is wrong with this place? This was Cthoron's last thought before his vision turned dark, and his body dropped to the ground, motionless. As Cthoron's life force faded, a small black cat with glowing purple eyes jumped onto the head of one of the skeletons and rubbed its shiny head. Baldies, bring all the bodies to Master so he can turn these poor fellows into our junior brothers, Hannah ordered the skeletons, and they soon began dragging the 10 bodies of Cthoron and his teammates deeper into the black world. From the corner of her eye, Hannah glanced at a small puff of black smoke that was secretly following them but did nothing and lay down on top of one of the skeletons' heads, trying to take a short nap after finishing her work. Chapter 11-19 Void Territory, Part 6. As Evan's understanding of void energy reached the 75% mark, he could do many things using void energy. At Novelban at opening a void rift to enter the void space, creating a void corridor to connect 2 points in void space and moving through that corridor to travel great distances instantly, shattering space, and many other feats that were previously impossible for him could now be achieved as long as he had enough energy. At first, after reaching the 75% mark, he thought about entering the void space to break through to rank 3. He believed that if he entered the void space, it would be difficult for the Eldritch creatures to monitor or attack him during his breakthrough. Unfortunately, when he went into the void space for the breakthrough, he found it filled with mindless Eldritch creatures, many of which were rank 4. The void space was even more dangerous than the Velgath world, so after a quick survey, he immediately came back. Upon exiting the void space, he realized that if he tried to break through to rank 3 without sufficient preparation, he would definitely be interrupted by the army of Eldritch creatures that were coming to attack him. Using the Solarian Sunfruit, he was confident that he could break through to rank 3 in less than 12 hours, but the problem was that the army of Eldritch creatures was already almost on his doorstep. So, in order to buy himself enough time to break through to rank 3, he decided to create a place that solely belonged to him. A place where no one would be able to monitor him or interrupt his breakthrough. A place where his shadow undeads will be able to face the army of Eldritch creatures without his help, buying him enough time to break through to rank 3. The bubble-like world that pulled a small part of the Velgath world inside the void was called Void Territory, a skill he created by using all of his understanding of the conceptual energy of the void and merging it with his unique skill, Shadow World. Although he said he pulled the area inside the void using the Void Territory, the Void Territory was actually located on the boundary between the Velgath world and void space. If he wanted, he could truly pull the Void Territory into the void space, but if he did, he would have to deal with the Eldritch creatures roaming inside the void space as well, which was a big no for him. Although the Void Territory was not in the void space, it was not in the Velgath world either, so it essentially became a small dimension, completely under Evan's control. Although the Void Territory was not in the void space, it was not in the Velgath world either, so it essentially became a small dimension, completely under Evan's control. Because the foundation of Void Territory was the Shadow World, which allowed him to control everything inside it, he could deal with the Eldritch creatures more easily. Moreover, because the Void Territory was created using his understanding of void energy, the power of all his void skills was even greater while inside the Void Territory. Inside the Void Territory, if he wanted, Evan could kill even a peak rank 3 core evolver with just a single thought by utilizing his understanding of the conceptual energy of void, but to do so, he would have to consume a large amount of energy, which he couldn't afford to do at the moment, as he needed to maintain the Void Territory until he successfully broke through to rank 3. Because the Void Territory was created by using his understanding of the conceptual energy of void and the unique skill Shadow World, which can only be used by channeling primordial shadow energy, the Void Territory's ability consumed both his void energy and primordial shadow energy. Evan had no problem with this because if he had to use only his void energy to maintain the Void Territory, he was sure he couldn't even sustain it for 4 hours, much less the 12 hours he needed to break through. But because he was using the primordial shadow energy along with void energy, he was confident that as long as he didn't attack and used his energy only to maintain the Void Territory, he would easily be able to hold until his breakthrough to rank 3. Using his control over the Void Territory, Evan watched as the 4 teams that entered the Void territory were easily killed by the skeletons summoned by Nihilus and his shadow undeads and nodded his head. He was even happier when he saw that the bodies of the Eldritch creatures that were killed didn't disappear like last time, meaning he could turn them into shadow undeads. The life chain skill along with the damage nullification authority is truly a nightmare for anyone. Evan muttered in a low voice as he looked at Miss Spider, standing some distance away from him. The reason Cthoron and the others were unable to destroy the skeletons was because of Miss Spider's ability, Life Chain, which connected the life force of all the skeletons and his shadow undeads to each other. Nihilus was currently at mid-level rank 2, and he could summon more than 60,000 skeletons ranging from F rank to some rank 2 ones. Combined with Evan's shadow undeads, which numbered around 15,000, there were around 75,000 individuals connected to each other, and the damage they took was distributed among them equally. Not only that, because of Miss Spider's damage nullification authority, the damage they took was further reduced by 30%, making the damage that Cthoron and other Eldritch creatures could inflict completely negligible. All in all, the current Void territory could be said to be a death tomb for anyone below rank 4. That rat moving all over the Void territory is quite interesting. Evan's eyes fell on 4 puffs of black smoke silently following his skeletons, which were bringing back the dead bodies of the 40 Eldritch creatures. Well, it doesn't matter what he's planning. Now that he's deep inside the Void territory, escape is impossible, he said to himself as he took out the small box containing the Solarian Sunfruit from his shadow storage. Let's begin, he muttered as the Void energy inside his core churned, and his zone expanded to cover the small area around him. At the same time, an illusionary shadow slowly started to form above his head. Chapter 1120 found him. Part 1. As Evan's zone expanded to cover the small area around him and an illusionary shadow formed above his head, the small void ring surrounding his primordial monarch core, which had formed when he reached rank 2 and created his zone, began to shine. As the small void ring, which contained many small star-like dots shone, the void zone Evan had released earlier moved towards the illusionary shadow above his head and slowly began to merge with it. As Evan's zone merged with the illusionary shadow, the glowing stars within the small void ring covering his primordial monarch core shattered one by one, and with the destruction of each star, the merging speed of the zone and the illusionary shadow increased. The illusionary world is very different from Anastasia's core world, which she had shown to Evan when he was in the closed world of Drezoth. Unlike the core world, which is not different from a normal world and can be said to be a completely real world with its own rules, the illusionary world is just a basic prototype of a world without its own rules, created by using the conceptual energy that the user has comprehended. At Novelban Evan was using his understanding of void energy to create the illusionary world, which would slowly evolve into a core world over time as he increased his rank and became a rank 4, rank 5, and rank 6 core evolver. If he hadn't met Anastasia, he wouldn't have broken through to rank 3 so soon. Previously, other than the void energy, he had planned to increase his understanding of primordial shadow energy as well before creating his illusionary world so that, along with the void energy, he could use primordial shadow energy as well to create a more powerful illusionary world. But when he met Anastasia, she told him that after increasing the rank of his core, he would be able to directly integrate the primordial shadow realm with his core. The primordial shadow realm is similar to Anastasia's core world, a world that Azeroth left behind. Once he integrated the primordial shadow realm with his core, he would be able to merge the world he created using his understanding of void energy with it. Since he could merge the two worlds later on, he didn't worry about using primordial shadow energy along with void energy to create an illusionary world. Of course, planning to merge the world created by void energy with the primordial shadow realm didn't mean he would create a weak illusionary world now. His understanding of void energy was already quite deep, and with his current comprehension, he was confident he could create an illusionary world far stronger than a normal world. Moreover, now that his understanding of void energy had reached 75%, he could finally use the full power of his zone that he had created. He had integrated the void senses skill into his zone when he created it. At that time, he believed that after integrating the void senses skill, he would be able to directly target the soul of his opponent using his zone because it was a skill related to souls. But later, he realized that because his understanding of void energy was very shallow, he couldn't use it properly. Even though his spiritual power was far above his core rank, it was still very difficult to target the soul of his opponent solely using his zone because his understanding of void energy, which was the base of his zone, was still very low. But now that his understanding had reached 75%, it was finally possible for him to use his zone to directly target the souls of his opponents using his zone. Because his zone was closely related to his illusionary world, the illusionary world he would create would also have the characteristics of his zone, making it more powerful than normal illusionary worlds. As more and more stars within the small ring covering Evan's primordial monarch core shattered, the speed at which his zone merged with the shadow hovering above his head increased. At the same time, as his zone merged with the shadow, the illusionary image above his head became clearer and clearer, revealing a dark purple area within it. The dark purple area was in complete chaos, with nothing but endless darkness surrounding it. But as time passed, the darkness began to recede, and void energy started to spread in all directions. In just 2 hours, Evan's zone, which could cover an area of around 50 kilometers, fully merged with the illusionary shadow above his head, and within the shadow, one could see endless void energy moving in all directions as if there were infinite void energy within it. Once his zone fully merged with the shadow, Evan waved his hand, and hundreds of high-level weapons, armorious metals, and other items ranging from rank 1 to the peak of rank 2 shot out of his shadow storage, heading straight into the illusionary shadow above his head. These weapons and other items were spoils that he got from the tomb of the ancient, and they held no further use for him. As the hundreds of precious objects entered the illusionary shadow, the void energy within it churned and began to refine them. As the void energy refined the weapons and other items, they were transformed into pure essence, which then merged with the illusionary shadow, giving birth to land. The color of the newly formed land was similar to void energy, completely dark purple. As the land began to appear within the illusionary shadow, Evan opened the small box in front of him and took out the Solarian sunfruit. A wave of cosmic solar flame erupted from the small Solarian sunfruit, but it didn't cause any harm to him. Without any hesitation, he ate the entire fruit in just 3 bites, and endless fiery energy rushed toward his core. As the energy of the Solarian sunfruit reached his core, the small void ring, now devoid of stars, immediately melted and merged with his primordial monarch core. The moment the ring merged with his core, the illusionary shadow above his head shook, and at the same time, a dark golden-colored fire suddenly appeared within it. Chapter 1121 found him. Part 2. Other than Zyrosk, everyone else is dead, Eldrich said with an ugly look on his bull-like face as he stared at the glowing dark purple crystal on top of the black staff he was holding. Dead. It's been less than 10 minutes since they entered, and they are already dead, Cthoron said in a shocked voice upon hearing Eldrich. Could it be the work of that rank 3 snake that fought against Drezoth? Most likely. If it were someone else, it wouldn't have been difficult for them to escape with their abilities, Eldrich said after thinking for a while. Fortunately, Zyrosk is still alive, so he must have escaped safely. Cthoron nodded hearing Eldrich, and they waited for news from Zyrosk. In a blink of an eye, 3 hours passed, but there was still no news from Zyrosk, which made them slightly anxious. When 4 hours passed, Cthoron couldn't wait any longer and spoke in a serious voice. Something's wrong. Even if he didn't find anything, Zyrosk should have come out by now, as we told him we don't have much time. Eldrich was silent upon hearing Cthoron, as he also felt something was wrong. At the same time, for some reason, as time passed, a strong feeling of uneasiness was growing deep within his heart, making him feel uncomfortable. Should we send more people? He asked after a moment of silence. Do you think it will work? Cthoron shook his head, hearing Eldrich. From the results with Cthoron and the others, I think instead of sending our soldiers to their deaths and giving that guy more time, we should launch an all-out attack. Or if you don't want to go in. He looked at the staff in Eldrich's hand. Then we should just use the racial weapon to directly get rid of him to prevent any kind of mishap. Eldrich furrowed his bull-like brows after hearing Cthoron and fell deep into thought. Knowing the uneasiness he was feeling was definitely not an illusion, he knew he needed to make a decision as soon as possible, or it might be too late. In the end, after thinking for a full 5 minutes, the bull-headed Eldritch creature took a deep breath and a sharp light flashed in his eyes. Let's go in, he said in a cold voice and turned around, looking at the army of nearly 1 million Eldritch creatures. He walked towards the army and ordered them to prepare for battle. Cthoron looked at Eldrich, who was organizing the army, and then turned back to look at the void territory. Upon looking at the black-purple energy bubble, for some reason, he felt as if they were about to enter a lion's den. I still think that instead of going in, using the racial weapon is the correct choice, but considering the danger of the world passage. Cthoron thought to himself and shook his head. About half an hour later, the army of 1 million Eldritch creatures was ready to enter the void territory, standing in front of the black-purple energy bubble. In front of the army, besides Eldrich and Cthoron, stood 10 other Eldritch creatures, each with the aura of mid-level rank 3 or peak rank 3 core evolvers. There is a possibility that we might be separated upon going in, but considering the size of the area that the invader pulled inside the void isn't large, it shouldn't be difficult for us to regroup, Eldrich said as he looked at the 10 Eldritch creatures who stood with him. After going in, Cthoron and I will be responsible for looking for that invader, while you guys will maintain the army and follow after us. Do you understand? Yes, Lord Eldrich, the 10 Eldritch creatures responded with a serious look on their faces. Good, Eldrich nodded upon hearing the 10 Eldritch creatures and looked at Cthoron, who nodded back and was the first to step forward. As Cthoron took a step forward and was about to enter the void territory, Eldrich's face changed and he quickly stopped him. Wait a minute, he said and closed his eyes. Cthoron and the other Eldritch creatures were confused when Eldrich suddenly closed his eyes, but they didn't say anything. About 10 minutes later, Eldrich opened his eyes and a cold smile appeared on his bull-like face. What's wrong? Cthoron raised an eyebrow when he saw the cold smile on Eldrich's face. Zyrosk just used the thing I gave him earlier, Eldrich said in a calm voice, but he couldn't hide the cold gleam in his eyes. Hearing this, Cthoron recalled the bottle of black blood-like liquid that Eldrich had given to Zyrosk and his eyes also lit up. Can you use the blood resonance to find him now? He asked in an excited voice. Eldrich nodded his head. I just tried it, and I can faintly feel the approximate location. I had told him to use it near the invader's location or directly throw it at him. Since he used it, it means he has found the invader's location, and it won't be difficult for us to catch him after going in. Good, Cthoron sighed in relief when he heard Eldrich, as he had always had a bad feeling about going inside the void territory. But now that they could find Evan, he relaxed a bit since his biggest concern was not being able to locate him after entering. I will go in first, Eldrich said, and he stepped inside the void territory before Cthoron and the others. Once Eldrich was in, Cthoron looked at the 10 Eldritch creatures, nodded, and then stepped in as well. While Cthoron and the other Eldritch creatures were entering the void territory, deep within it, in a certain place, 5 shadow undead stood in a circle. In the middle of the circle, an Eldritch creature, who looked like a mass of black smoke, was sitting on the ground. In front of the Eldritch creature was a small puddle of black blood, trembling from time to time as if it were not blood but a living creature. The black blood continued to tremble for a few minutes and then suddenly stopped. The moment the blood stopped trembling, the Eldritch creature surrounded by the 5 shadow undead raised his head and spoke in a low voice. They are coming. Chapter 1122 Morurok, Part 1. 1 hour before the Eldritch army entered the void territory, Illusia, Albelu, Eclipse, Necros, Hannah, Nihilus, and a few other shadow undeads, along with thousands of skeletons, moved toward the deeper areas of the void territory. The skeletons walking with the shadow undead were dragging 40 dead bodies of the Eldritch creatures who had entered the void territory to gather information. A few kilometers behind the shadow undeads, a puff of black smoke, hidden from all of them, was secretly following. Throw all of them right there. After a few minutes of walking, Illusia instructed the skeletons, pointing toward a pit nearly 10 meters wide and about 100 meters deep. Shouldn't we bring them to Master so that he can turn them into our junior brothers? Necros asked in a confused voice when he heard Illusia's command. Use your brain, you musclehead. Illusia responded in a plain voice. Master is currently in the middle of a breakthrough and can't waste his energy to turn them. We'll have to wait until he finishes his breakthrough. Oh, Necros nodded his giant head at Illusia's explanation, but soon after, he once again spoke in a confused voice. You told me to use my brain, but didn't we discover that none of us possess brains after becoming shadow undeads? Illusia and the other shadow undead fell silent at Necros' words and their expressions twitched. They all looked at Necros with cold eyes, wanting to beat him up. The topic of brains was a sore subject for them. In the past, after discovering they no longer had brains after becoming shadow undeads, they had promised never to bring up the matter again. Then why the hell did this bastard bring up such a cruel topic once more? Necros, do you want to die? Ollie asked while gritting her teeth. She had an IQ of 180 before she turned into a shadow undead, so losing her brain was a big blow to her. However, other than some simple-minded shadow undeads like Necros and a few others, no one else believed she had a 180 IQ because the things she did before her death were just too stupid. Necros was once again confused when he heard Ollie's cold voice, and he asked while scratching the back of his head. Aren't we already dead? How can you kill me again? You. Ollie was stunned by Necros' response and didn't know what to say. Illusia and the other shadow undead also looked at Necros strangely, feeling as if this guy was just pretending to be stupid to irritate Ollie to death. Nihilus and his skeleton army watched everything that was going on with a look of enjoyment. No one knew where Nihilus got it, but he was even eating popcorn while watching the show. Though, all the popcorn he ate came out from the gaps between his ribcage. Some of the skeletons moved quickly, picking up the popcorn that fell out of Nihilus' body and putting it back into his popcorn bucket. Because he was eating and replenishing the popcorn at the same time, Nihilus' popcorn bucket became known as the infinite popcorn bucket among the skeleton army. All right, you guys, that's enough. Evan's shadow clone appeared as Ollie was contemplating putting some kind of curse on Necros. Seeing Evan, Nihilus immediately put his popcorn bucket back inside his storage ring, deciding to save it for the next time he saw something interesting. You guys really like to bully poor Necros, huh? Evan said while shaking his head as he sat down on top of the 5-meter-tall Necros. Master, don't be fooled by this guy's innocent look. He's just pretending to be stupid, Ollie said in an irritated voice while glaring at Necros. Innocent look. Evan glanced at Necros' face from the corner of his eyes, and his mouth twitched. Necros was a cyclops with one big purple eye in the middle of his face, a mouth full of sharp teeth, and 2 canine teeth protruding from both sides of his mouth. I mean, from which angle does she think that's an innocent-looking face? Evan thought to himself, but when he saw Necros still scratching the back of his head with a confused expression, he nodded his head. All right, this guy is really innocent. I think I'll let him join Alora in the future so he can watch anime with her and learn some culture, he thought and glanced at the puff of black smoke in the distance. You have been following my friends for quite some time now. Even when they gave you plenty of opportunities to attack, you did nothing and continued to tail them. At first, I thought you were trying to locate me before making a move, but even after finding me, you still don't seem inclined to act, Evan said in a voice filled with curiosity. Tell me, brother, what exactly are you planning? Because from the way you are behaving, it doesn't seem like you're here to cause trouble. As Evan finished speaking, Ollie and the other shadow undeads also directed their cold gazes into the distance. Thanks to the Void Territory, they had detected Zyrosk long ago, but Evan's shadow clone had instructed them to ignore him, so they took no action. As all of them looked ahead, a puff of black smoke soon drifted toward Evan and stopped a few hundred meters away. After pausing, the smoke churned wildly before taking the shape of a humanoid figure, shrouded in darkness. Greetings, Lord of Monsters. The figure cloaked in black smoke bowed and spoke in a respectful tone. Evan's expression turned strange at the title the Eldritch creature used to address him, but he brushed it off and asked again, So, what are you doing here? The Eldritch creature took out a bottle of black blood from his storage ring and held it up for Evan to see. Lord of Monsters, I can help you lure the powerful Eldritch creatures waiting outside into a trap, the creature said as the smoke around him began to dissipate. As the black smoke completely disappeared, a 2 meters tall dark brown colored creature with 2 bulging arms and a face resembling that of a human appeared there. On the creature's face, there were 3 eyes, 2 positioned where a human's eyes should be and a third in the middle of both of the eyes. The central eye of the Eldritch creature spun slowly like a whirlpool, emanating a strange and unsettling aura. If Uthuric or any other Eldritch creatures could see Zyrosk's current appearance, they would have been shocked because Zyrosk was actually Morurok, the person who killed Zalthal. Chapter 1123 Morurok, Part 2. They are coming, Morurok said as the puddle of black blood in front of him ceased trembling. The 5 shadow undeads surrounding Morurok remained silent upon hearing the Eldritch creature, their cold eyes fixed on him. I am curious, is there a special reason you decided to side with me? As Morurok was feeling uneasy under the gaze of the shadow undeads, he heard a calm voice and saw Evan, who was sitting atop Necro's shoulder looking at him with interest. Morurok didn't respond immediately to Evan's question and hesitated for a moment, but he eventually sighed and spoke in a low voice. I decided to side with you because I don't want to die. Evan raised an eyebrow upon hearing Morurok, looking at him in confusion. Seeing Evan's puzzled expression, Morurok began to explain. Most Eldritch creatures are born with some kind of special ability. The clan I belong to possesses unique eye powers. Every person born in our clan has a type of eye power that can greatly enhance their abilities. He pointed to his third eye, which spun like a whirlpool, positioned between his 2 normal eyes. My eye allows me to peer into the future, and some time ago, when I used my powers, I saw great destruction overtaking the Azragoth world. Eldritch horrors were running rampant across the world, and it was crumbling under their mindless slaughter. I don't want to be killed in this bloody conflict, so I decided to side with you, someone I didn't see when I peered into the future. By aligning with you, I might have a chance to survive the coming calamity. Evan narrowed his eyes upon hearing Morurak's words. A bloody massacre. Could it be that even if I do nothing, this world is destined for destruction? He thought and asked about the Eldritch horrors Morurok had mentioned. Morurok explained to Evan about the Eldritch horrors, which currently occupied 30% of the Velgath world and how their numbers were increasing at a terrifying rate. Evan couldn't help but frown as Morurok detailed the situation in the Velgath world. Not only will I have to deal with the Eldritch creatures of the Eldronthia Empire in the future, but it seems I will also have to contend with these mindless Eldritch horrors. He thought, his mind racing. He glanced at Morurok, and although he didn't sense any deceit from the Eldritch creature before him, he still couldn't fully trust him. But if he is telling the truth, then what is the reason behind the sudden attack of the Eldritch horrors? According to him, this attack won't be just a minor assault, but a full-scale invasion that will lead to a bloody massacre across the world. It's been thousands of years since Emperor Velgath pushed the Eldritch energy to the corners of the world, so why would the Eldritch horrors suddenly want to launch an all-out attack? He muttered to himself and asked after thinking for a while, instead of siding with me, you could have informed Emperor Velgath about the impending attack from the Eldritch horrors. If you had prepared in advance, it wouldn't be difficult to stop their attack and survive, right? Morurok shook his head upon hearing Evan's suggestion and replied in a low voice, even if I tell them, they wouldn't believe me. Why not? Evan asked with narrowed eyes, feeling this guy was hiding something. Morurok remained silent at first, but seeing Evan's eyes fixed intently on him, he finally spoke in a hesitant voice. A few years ago, I foresaw a similar future where the Velgath world was nearly destroyed by the Eldritch horrors. When I informed my father of this vision, he immediately relayed the news to His Majesty. Because my father was one of the generals, Emperor Velgath took the warning seriously and made extensive preparations to face the attack of the Eldritch horrors. But in the end, even after more than a year, nothing happened and it turned out my prediction was wrong. Hearing Morurok, Evan looked at him strangely and after a moment of silence, he finally spoke. So you are saying your future predictions are not that accurate? Yes, Morurok nodded while looking somewhat embarrassed. Evan was speechless at Morurok's admission and wondered if the creature's mind was functioning properly. You know the future you see is not accurate, yet you still dared to side with me. Aren't you afraid you will be wrong once again and that there won't be any attack from the Eldritch horrors? Even if the Eldritch horrors do not launch an attack, aren't you planning to destroy the Eldronthia Empire and kill all the Eldritch creatures? Morurok retorted when he noticed Evan was looking at him as if he was an idiot. Evan's expression grew even stranger after hearing Morurok's words. Even I am not certain I can destroy the Eldronthia Empire, but this guy has already decided to side with me. Suddenly, he thought of something and glanced at Morurok's third eye. This eye, isn't it similar to Xaeltor's eye, whom I killed a few days ago? He recalled that Morurok had mentioned his father was one of the generals and he immediately understood he was talking about Xaeltor. I killed his father, yet this guy still decided to side with me. What the hell is he thinking? Just as Evan began to suspect that something was off with Morurok's brain, he sensed something and looked into the distance. It seems this guy wasn't lying. The first one to enter is actually a rank 4 core evolver, he thought to himself, jumping down from the top of Necros. As he landed, he sensed more and more people entering the void territory, including another rank 4 and several rank 3 and lower level core evolvers. They are here, you know what to do, right? Evan asked Morurok while waving his hand to signal his shadow undeads and skeletons to leave. Morurok nodded in response and transformed into a puff of black smoke, retreating to hide at a distance. Let's see if he truly wants to side with me or if he is just putting on an act, Evan thought with an indifferent look on his face as he sat down on the ground and closed his eyes. Chapter 1124 Rank 3, Part 1. Cthoron moved inside the void territory, heading towards the location where Morurok had used the bottle of black blood. Behind him, Cthoron followed closely, his eyes scanning the area of the void territory with a serious expression. This place is truly strange. If we want to fly, we need to use 5 times the normal energy, and we can't ascend more than 10 meters above the ground, Cthoron said in a deep voice, glancing around at the blackened surroundings. Not only that, but even our spiritual senses are suppressed here. We can only scan an area of about 1 kilometer around us, Cthoron added with a frown, pushing his spiritual senses to their limits yet finding that he could only cover a distance of 2 kilometers at best. He has turned this place into his own territory and can control most of the things within it. How can a rank 2 core evolver create such an ability? Cthoron muttered in a shocked voice, growing increasingly fearful of Evan as he learned more about the Void territory. Eldrich remained silent at Cthoron's words, but he, too, was shocked after spending only a few minutes inside the Void territory. Soon, they neared their destination and could see the small puddle of black blood that had been guiding them. However, their attention was quickly drawn away from the blood when they noticed Evan sitting on the ground with his eyes closed not far from the puddle. The most peculiar thing was the pillar of white light surrounding him, acting as a barrier. The pillar was 5 meters in diameter and nearly 10 meters high. Even though they were still a few hundred meters away, Cthoron and Eldrich could sense that the pillar of light was no ordinary means of defense. Lord Eldrich, Lord Cthoron, as they studied the pillar of light, a puff of black smoke materialized in front of them and formed into a humanoid figure. Zyrosk, Eldrich nodded when he recognized the Eldritch creature and asked in a deep voice, "Do you know what that thing is?" Zyrosk looked towards the pillar of light and nodded. "Earlier, I overheard that invader talking to some black monsters. He mentioned that the light pillar is a type of defensive barrier capable of blocking most attacks from rank 4 core evolvers. He plans to use it as protection while he breaks through to rank 3. Can block attacks from rank 4 core evolvers." Cthoron narrowed his eyes at Zyrosk's words, a murderous glint flashing within them as he stared intently at Evan. That's what he told those black monsters when he explained what they had to do while he breaks through to rank 3. Zyrosk nodded and continued, "But there is also a weakness. Because this barrier is so powerful, he can't sense what is happening outside, so he can move freely. Is there no one protecting him?" Eldrich asked with a puzzled look on his face because of the absence of any black monsters like Albelu or Rattle guarding Evan. "There were 2 peak rank 2 monsters guarding him, but I had already dealt with them before you arrived," Zyrosk replied calmly. Cthoron and Eldrich nodded hearing Zyrosk, not suspecting anything as Zyrosk was a mid-level rank 3 core evolver, so it really wasn't difficult for him to secretly kill 2 peak rank 2 monsters. "Lord Eldrich, I think we should act as soon as possible. Before you arrived, that invader ate a bright orange-colored fruit. Although I don't know what kind of fruit it was, he told the black monsters that they only needed to guard him for 4 hours, and he would be able to break through to rank 3. Eldrich and Cthoron's eyes widened at Zyrosk's words and their eyes flashed with murderous intent. "Sure enough, he has something that can shorten the time needed for his breakthrough," Cthoron said coldly as he looked at Evan. "Since he can't sense what's going on outside, let's break the barrier in a single move using our most powerful attacks and kill him instantly, giving him no chance to react," Eldrich said coldly as he advanced toward Evan. Cthoron followed him as a silver-colored mace filled with sharp spikes materialized in his hands. Eldrich also drew a gleaming axe from his storage ring, and both of them halted just before the barrier. They touched the barrier with their hands and feeling its sturdiness, their eyes narrowed. "It's a truly powerful barrier," Cthoron murmured in a low voice as the mace in his hands began to glow with black fire. The axe in Eldrich's hand also shone with a bright light, sharp slashes emanating from it that seemed capable of cleaving the world in two. From a distance, Morurok watched everything silently, his heart pounding wildly, a wave of nervousness washing over him. After charging their weapons to their maximum power, Cthoron and Eldrich exchanged a glance and nodded. Suddenly, 2 projections of illusionary worlds, emitting the power of laws, appeared above their heads and their power surged outward. Roar! A beast-like roar erupted from Eldrich's throat as he brought his axe down in a fierce chop. Simultaneously, Cthoron struck the barrier with his blazing mace, unleashing its full power. Under the immense pressure of their attacks, the previously sturdy space of the Void territory began to distort, the darkness that shrouded the surroundings blown away, revealing the bright light of the outside world as the very rules that governed the Void territory were annihilated in that area. The mace and axe collided with the barrier, but in the next instant, shock flashed across Eldrich and Cthoron's faces as their weapons passed through the barrier without causing any harm. Cthoron and Eldrich were caught off guard as their attacks passed through the barrier without resistance. The unexpected momentum caused them to stumble forward, and before they realized it, both had crossed into the barrier. At that precise moment, Evan, who had been sitting calmly inside with his eyes closed, vanished and reappeared outside the barrier in the blink of an eye. At the same time, boom, the terrifying force of Eldrich and Cthoron's attacks smashed into the ground within the barrier, but the pillar-shaped shield only glowed briefly before the immense power of their strikes was completely neutralized, dissipating into nothing. Eldrich and Cthoron were stunned when they realized they had entered the barrier while Evan stood outside, completely unharmed. As they stared at Evan, a dreadful realization dawned on them, and when they tried to exit the barrier, they found themselves unable to break through, making their hearts sink with the weight of their predicament, and like it was not enough, their expressions grew even more grim when they noticed Zyrosk walking calmly towards Evan and taking his place by his side. Chapter 1125 Rank 3, Part 2. Chapter 1125 Rank 3, Part 2. The Pillar of Light was actually a space ceiling formation, somewhat similar to the one Ashley had created when Anastasia and the others trapped Anderson and Halphus outside the Magmara Kingdom. Before leaving the closed world of the Drades, Evan had asked Ashley to create a space ceiling formation plate for him, that he could use at any time to trap his enemies. The Forbidden Land was a very dangerous place, so he needed items that could help him escape from powerful foes. The formation plate Ashley created for him could trap peak rank 4 core evolvers for more than 5 hours or a rank 5 core evolver for a short period of time. With his various escape methods, Evan was confident that as long as he could trap his enemy for a while, he could easily evade them. This was why he had brought the formation plate with him. Creating such a formation plate was extremely difficult and required many high-level resources. If it hadn't been for Halphus and Anderson, who had generously donated their wealth to them in the Magmara Kingdom, Evan wouldn't have asked Ashley to make it for him. Before creating the Void Territory, Evan had considered using the formation to trap himself inside as a defensive measure and make a breakthrough to rank 3 inside it. However, the space ceiling formation was so powerful that it could completely isolate the space within it. This meant that once it was fully activated, even the world essence from outside wouldn't be able to penetrate it. Evan knew that during his breakthrough to rank 3, he would need a large amount of world essence. Even if he used all the essence stones he had, it might not be enough. Therefore, he abandoned the idea of using the space ceiling formation as a protective measure during his breakthrough. Zyrosk, you. Eldrich was furious when he saw Zyrosk standing with Evan. He wasn't an idiot, so he immediately realized that it was a trap. Cthoron was also shocked and glared at Zyrosk with cold eyes. Why do I get the feeling they want to eat you? Do you think these guys swing that way? Evan asked in a relaxed voice, glancing at Morurok. Morurok's eyes twitched uncontrollably at Evan's comment. If he weren't unsure about defeating him, he would have definitely attacked him. Eldrich and Cthoron were also enraged by Evan's mockery and attacked the pillar-shaped barrier, trapping them with all their might. Unfortunately, their full-powered attacks only caused slight ripples on the barrier and failed to inflict any real damage. Don't waste your strength. Even if a rank 5 core evolver were trapped inside, it would take them some time to break free, let alone you two who are still beginner-level rank 4 core evolvers, Evan said in a flat voice as a chair emerged from his shadow storage and he sat down. For the next 10 minutes, Evan watched as Cthoron and Eldrich relentlessly attacked the barrier, trying to break free. But even after 10 minutes of continuous assault, they only managed to dim the barrier slightly and caused no significant damage. Satisfied? Evan asked with a smile once Cthoron and Eldrich finally stopped attacking. Seeing Evan's smug, punchable face, Cthoron and Eldrich's faces turned red with anger, but they felt helpless against the barrier. By the way, brother, why don't you remove that black smoke shrouding you and let them see your true appearance? Evan suddenly spoke to Morurok in a light tone. Morurok was stunned by Evan's request and hesitated. Why are you afraid of showing them your true appearance? Are you planning to go back and join these guys in the future? Evan's smile disappeared when he saw Morurok's hesitation, and he asked in an indifferent voice. Evan didn't know Morurok's exact situation, but when Cthoron and Eldrich arrived, they called him Zyrosk, which was different from his real name. Moreover, in front of those two, Morurok never dispersed the smoke covering him, as if he didn't want to reveal his true appearance to them. Although Evan wasn't certain, he guessed that Morurok must have another identity, and if he truly wanted to bring him to his side, he needed to ensure that Morurok lost all hope of going back. If Morurok didn't expose his true identity, he could easily return to the Eldritch creature's side in the future using his second identity. Seeing Evan's cold eyes, Morurok realized that Evan wasn't joking. If he refused to reveal his true face to Cthoron and Eldrich, he would be in serious trouble. Damn it, I was thinking of going back if my vision turned out to be a false alarm or if this guy lost, but once my true identity is exposed, I won't be able to go back. Morurok cursed inwardly, but under Evan's icy gaze, the black smoke around him finally dissipated. At Novelban Cthoron and Eldrich were puzzled by the conversation between Evan and Zyrosk. They knew Zyrosk belongs to a species of Eldritch creatures known as Voidmire, and they don't have a physical form, so they couldn't understand what Evan meant by revealing his true appearance. But when the smoke was cleared and Zyrosk's face was revealed, they were shocked to their core. Morurok, They both exclaimed in unison and their eyes widened in disbelief. Seeing their shocked expressions, Evan glanced at Morurok from the corner of his eye and nodded slightly. So, he really does have another identity. He thought to himself and shook his head. How can you use the power of the Voidmire clan? No, more importantly, how could you side with him? Have you forgotten that he is the one who killed your father? Eldrich roared, his voice thick with rage as he glared at Morurok with eyes full of hate. Morurok remained silent upon hearing Eldrich, meeting his furious gaze with an indifferent expression, showing no sign of remorse or hesitation. You bastard! Eldrich's eyes burned red with fury at Morurok's indifferent demeanor, and he launched another frenzied attack against the barrier. Evan watched calmly as Eldrich and Cthoron assaulted the barrier in anger. After a few moments, he sighed and spoke in a flat tone. I don't mean to interrupt, but instead of worrying about why he betrayed you, shouldn't you be more concerned about your army? Hearing Evan, Eldrich and Cthoron abruptly ceased their attacks and their expressions changed. Eldrich quickly took out the black staff from his storage ring, and as he looked at the black crystal atop it, his bull-like face turned deathly pale. Chapter 1126 Rank 3, Part 3. Just as Lord Eldrich predicted, we really got separated after coming here. Velgath, a mid-level rank 3 Eldritch creature with a body similar to that of a birdman, spoke in a low voice. He looked around and saw that, besides him, nearly 100,000 Eldritch creatures had also appeared in the area. However, among the Eldritch creatures that appeared with him, there were no rank 3 core evolvers. Most of them ranged from C rank to the peak of rank 1, with some being rank 2. Velgath and the other high-level Eldritch creatures had already anticipated a situation like this, so he didn't panic and immediately took action. In just a few minutes, he organized everything, and the army of nearly 100,000 Eldritch creatures was standing in a proper formation. Now let's look for the Oth. Velgath was planning to search for Eldrich and the other high-level members of the Eldritch creatures when suddenly, he sensed the aura of a rank 3 monster heading in their direction. Besides rank 3, there were also the auras of thousands of low-level core evolvers ranging from F rank to the peak of rank 1, with some being rank 2. Velgath looked ahead and saw a nearly 10-meter-tall, black-colored griffin, exuding the aura of a beginner-level rank 3 core evolver walking towards them. Behind the black griffin, there were thousands of skeletons and shadow undeads, each radiating a cold, murderous aura. This beginner-level rank 3 griffin had been killed by Evan in the Tomb of the Ancient. The moment the army of Eldritch creatures came into sight, the griffin didn't say a word and immediately shot towards Velgath, who was the only rank 3 core evolver among them. A zone of golden lightning erupted from the griffin's body, and its speed surged, reaching a terrifying level. Velgath's eyes narrowed when he felt the destructive power of the golden lightning, and even though his rank was higher than the griffin, he didn't dare underestimate his opponent. A storm of wind erupted from Velgath's body like a raging tornado, and he unleashed his wind zone, colliding with Griffin's lightning zone in the blink of an eye. Boom! A loud booming sound echoed throughout the void territory, and upon the collision of the zones, both the lightning and wind zones were instantly shattered, sending waves of terrifying energy in all directions. Even though Velgath was a mid-level rank 3 core evolver, his zone couldn't surpass the Griffin's and they were evenly matched. Impossible! Velgath was shocked by the result, but the Griffin didn't give him any time to react as it had already appeared in front of him, raising one of its front paws to crush the Eldritch creature. A sharp golden lightning spear formed under the Griffin's paw, smashing down at Velgath without giving him any chance to respond. Don't look down on me, you beast! Velgath roared in fury as the Griffin attacked him relentlessly. He opened his mouth, spitting out a swirling wind tornado from his agala-like beak. The wind tornado and the lightning spear clashed violently, and under the rotating pressure of the tornado, the lightning spear was torn apart, sending sparks of golden lightning flying everywhere. The power of the wind tornado decreased greatly after destroying the lightning spear, but it still sent the Griffin flying backwards nearly 100 meters. Although the Griffin was pushed back, it did not sustain any damage. A lightning storm erupted from its body, heading straight towards Velgath. Velgath also moved forward, and soon a fierce battle broke out between the two rank 3 core evolvers. The wind storms raged, and the lightning destroyed everything as the aura of destruction spread in all directions. At the same time, the army of skeletons and shadow undeads also reached the Eldritch creature's army, sparking another brutal fight. Because of Velgath's absence, the other rank 2 core evolvers took command of the army and confronted the skeletons and shadow undeads. The number of Eldritch creatures was far higher than the number of skeletons and shadow undeads, so the Eldritch army wasn't initially afraid of them. However, just 1 minute into the fighting, The Eldritch creatures battling the skeletons and shadow undeads showed expressions of horror as they realized they couldn't cause any damage to their enemies. Not only that, but all the skeletons and shadow undeads were completely unafraid of injury or pain. While facing their opponents' attacks, they simply ignored them and focused on killing as many Eldritch creatures as possible. Due to the mad fighting style of the skeletons and shadow undeads, in just 5 minutes, more than 30,000 Eldritch creatures had died. Malgarith also showed a look of despair because the griffin was the same as the other shadow undeads and skeletons. It also took Malgarith's attacks without dodging and, in return, caused severe injuries to him. The worst part was, even after taking his attacks head-on, the griffin remained completely unscathed. Additionally, among the skeletons were skeleton mages who could cast healing spells on the other skeletons, so the damage they received was minimal. Roar! Suddenly, amid the battle between the Eldritch creatures and the undeads, a beastly roar resounded and a 300-meter-tall creature appeared, with a sharp horn protruding from the middle of its head and a single giant, burning purple eye in the center of its face. Necros looked down at the ant-like Eldritch creatures below him, and with a single palm strike, crushed dozens of them. The ground shook, the black sky rumbled, space distorted, and the blood mist, along with the aura of death, spread in all directions as the army of undeads slaughtered the Eldritch creatures without giving them any chance. Stop it! When Malgarith saw how the army of Eldritch creatures was being slaughtered by the undeads, especially by Necros, who was killing tens of Eldritch creatures with each move, his bird-like eyes turned red and he roared in anger. A powerful storm of wind erupted from his body, pushing the griffin back. After pushing the griffin back, Malgarith turned around, intending to return and kill the skeletons and shadow undeads, but before he could. Ting, 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 dash 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 dash. A strange rattling sound spread through the surroundings, and Malgarith's body froze for a moment. The moment his body froze, crackle, boom, a lightning spear tore through the space and struck the back of Malgarith's head, penetrating his skull and sending him flying like a ragdoll. At Novelban at black blood flowed from the back of Malgarith's head, but due to his hard skull, his brain survived and he was still alive. Just when Malgarith thought he had survived, the strange sound echoed again, and his body stiffened once more. At the same time, a giant black tail fell from the sky and struck Malgarith's head, shattering his already damaged skull into pieces. Rattle looked down at Malgarith's headless body, and after confirming that he was dead, he turned to look at the griffin and immediately left. The griffin did not say anything, and seeing Rattle leave, it joined Necros and the others, and in just a few minutes, the entire army led by Malgarith was wiped out. Chapter 1127 Rank 3, Part 4. How is this possible? It's not even half an hour since we came here. How can more than 300,000 soldiers, including 4 Rank 3 ones, already be dead? Eldrich roared in a voice filled with disbelief as he stared at the racial weapon in his hands. 300,000 soldiers are dead. Cthoron also showed a look of horror on his face and turned to look at Evan, who was still smiling. So that's the racial weapon Morurok spoke about, Evan said inwardly as he looked at the black staff in Eldrich's hand. He was very curious about this thing because, according to Morurok, it was the strongest artifact of the Eldronthia Empire. However, due to the high level of this artifact, Morurok wasn't qualified to know many details about it. How can you kill so many of our soldiers in such a short period of time? Even if you take that rank 3 snake and the other 8 black monsters into account, it's impossible for you to kill so many of them in less than half an hour. Tell me, what kind of wicked trick did you use? Eldrich roared with bloodshot eyes as he attacked the barrier madly. Evan leaned back and rested his head on the side of his palm, and instead of answering the question, he asked something that made their hearts chill. Who said there was just 1 rank 3 snake and only 8 black monsters? Eldrich and Cthoron's eyes trembled when they heard Evan's question, and a dreadful possibility came to their minds. Could it be that there are more of those black monsters? Cthoron muttered in a tone filled with shock. Evan just smiled when he heard Cthoron's words and didn't say anything. But his smile already answered Cthoron's question, and he was even more shocked. How can you summon so many high-level monsters? It doesn't make any sense. You are just a rank 2 core evolver. It's impossible for you to provide the energy to summon so many creatures, he said in a low voice, looking at Evan as if he were looking at a monster. Evan didn't care about the way Cthoron was looking at him. His eyes were focused on the black staff in Eldrich's hand. From the looks of it, he is using this thing to monitor the situation of the other Eldritch creatures. It is called the racial weapon, so does it mean all the abilities of this thing are related to the Eldritch race? Evan thought to himself as his eyes gleamed. He closed his eyes for a moment, and after checking the situation of all his shadow undeads, he found that most of them had a great advantage in fight. The shadow undeads and skeletons were not afraid of pain, and now with the life chain ability of Miss Spider, they had simply turned into killing machines that started slaughtering the Eldritch creatures without any problem. Even when facing peak rank 3 Eldritch creatures, it was not difficult for them to hold them back. Even if they couldn't kill them, they just needed to hold them off until Evan broke through to rank 3 and their task would be completed. The effect of Solarian Sunfruit is better than I expected. I should be able to completely form my illusionary world in about 4 more hours. Evan's clone checked the situation of the main body and muttered inwardly. Just as he was checking the situation, he felt a thick murderous aura locking onto him. Evan raised his head and saw Eldrich staring at him with bloodshot eyes as hot steam came out of his nostrils. The horns on top of his bull-like head were glowing, and it looked as if he was ready to go on a rampage. "You bastard, do you think you can save yourself by trapping us here?" Eldrich shouted in an anger-filled voice as the black staff in his hand began to glow. "Eldrich, do you want to?" Cthoron was stunned when he saw the change in the racial weapon and immediately understood what Eldrich was planning. We don't have a choice. Even though I wanted to save the killing effect of the racial weapon due to the danger of the world passage, we can't let someone like him roam in our world, or he might destroy everything, Eldrich said in a cold voice, and a great sword appeared in his hand. "That sword, it's my father's sword." Morurok was surprised when he saw the sword in Eldrich's hand. Evan narrowed his eyes when he heard Morurok's words, and a sudden possibility came to his mind. Racial weapon, killing effect, he thought, and suddenly stood up. Eldrich didn't care about Evan's reaction and brought the great sword near the glowing black staff. As the sword approached the staff, a black aura came out of the sword, and even though Evan was outside the formation and couldn't feel the fluctuations of the aura, he could tell that it was Eldritch's aura, whom he had killed when he first came to Velgath world. Eldrich glanced at Evan with cold eyes and, the next second, poured all of his Eldritch energy into the staff. The purple crystal embedded atop the staff shone brightly and sucked in Eldritch's aura that came out of the sword. The moment the crystal absorbed Eldritch's aura, a scene showing Evan blowing up Eldritch inside the shadow world using the halberd of destruction appeared above the staff. At the same time, the moment the scene appeared and showed Evan killing Eldritch, a black beam of light, that was releasing a dreadful aura that made people despair, shot out from the staff. The black beam of light easily passed through the barrier as if it didn't exist and disappeared deep inside the void territory. Eldrich was stunned when he saw the black beam of light disappear deep inside the void territory instead of attacking Evan, but soon he realized something and sneered. "I see, I was wondering why you were wasting your time with us instead of trying to break through to rank 3. But it seems you are just a clone, while the real you are trying to break through to rank 3, he said while smiling coldly. "But it doesn't matter. Now that I have used the racial weapon, you are as good as dead." As Eldrich finished speaking, the black beam of light traveled deep inside the void territory, and before anyone could react, the black beam struck Evan, who was sitting with his eyes closed. Chapter 1128 Rank 3, Part 5. When the beam of black light, releasing a dreadful aura that even the space ceiling formation created by Ashley couldn't block, shot out, Evan's clone tried to stop it. However, the beam was so fast that before he could react, it disappeared deep inside the void territory, heading in the direction of Evan's real body. The clone's eyes flashed with murderous intent when he saw this, but he couldn't do anything except stare deep into the void territory. Morurok was also stunned by the sudden turn of events, and his face turned ugly. Although he had heard a few things about the racial weapon, he didn't know one could use such a powerful attack with it. He had also heard what Eldrich just said, and the words killing effect made him feel anxious. "If this guy dies here, I will also be finished," he thought inwardly, feeling the urge to curse Evan, who had forced him to reveal his true face in front of Eldrich and Cthoron. If he hadn't shown his true face earlier, he might still have been able to return to the Eldronthia Empire using his real identity. But now that Eldrich and Cthoron know his true identity, he has no chance of going back. Eldrich and Cthoron looked at the glowing crystal atop the black staff, which was now showing the scene of the black beam of light traveling deep inside the void territory and striking Evan right on the forehead. "What a cunning bastard. He sent his clone here to keep us distracted while he is secretly trying to break through to rank 3. Eldrich said with a sneer on his face as he saw small black lines spreading all over Evan's body after he was struck by the attack released by the racial weapon. In the cave, Evan opened his eyes and looked at the black lines that were rapidly spreading all over his body like poisonous snakes. The illusionary shadow of the deep purple-colored world above his head was still rapidly expanding, and the area of the void world above his head was already more than 200 kilometers. A deep orange fire was moving in all directions inside the illusionary world, and whenever the fire passed by, the world began to expand even faster. For a moment, upon seeing the black lines spreading all over his body, Evan was startled and felt a deep sense of crisis. But soon after, he noticed something and his face turned strange. This strange feeling, is this some kind of curse? He muttered in an uncertain voice. But the next second, a blank expression appeared on his face as he saw two notifications flashing in front of his eyes. You have been affected by the death curse under the effect of the law of cause and effect. The effect of the death curse has been nullified by the effect of your title, the creator of the primordial shadow realm. As he read the two notifications, the corner of Evan's mouth couldn't help but twitch. And here I thought I was doomed when I felt that dreadful aura earlier, he muttered in a low voice but soon narrowed his eyes. The law of cause and effect. He looked at the first notification with a thoughtful expression and recalled what Eldrich had done before using the racial weapon. Killing effect, racial weapon. He said to himself as a possibility came to his mind. Could it be that he can use that racial weapon to curse anyone who kills a member of the Eldritch race? He muttered, feeling this possibility was quite high, especially after seeing the way Eldrich used the curse. He had used Xaelter's sword as a medium, and when he cast the curse, the crystal atop the staff showed the scene where Evan had killed Xaeltor using the halberd of destruction. If it is true, then this weapon is truly terrifying. In case these guys encounter a powerful enemy, they can just send a low-level Eldritch creature to get killed by that enemy, and once that Eldritch creature dies at the hands of the powerful enemy, they can use one of its belongings as a medium to cast this death curse on the person who killed it. Evan felt a chill run down his spine when this possibility crossed his mind, and he couldn't help but feel lucky that his title could protect him from all curses below the origin level and weaken the power of origin level curses by 50%. From the power of this curse, I can tell that even a peak rank 5 core evolver wouldn't be able to survive if they got hit by this curse. Unfortunately for them, they encountered someone like me who is not afraid of curses. Evan said to himself as his lips curled upwards, but he soon remembered his title, the Cursed One, and the curse of his bloodline, and the smile on his face disappeared. All right, forget what I just said, I am really afraid of these damned curses. As Evan looked at his hands, he saw that the black lines that had appeared on his body due to the effect of the death curse were slowly disappearing. But just before those black lines fully vanished, the primordial shadow energy inside his core shook and an aura belonging to pure death poured out of it. Evan was stunned when he felt the aura of death emerging from his core, and he immediately recognized it. The conceptual energy of death, he said in a stunned voice, feeling the aura emanating from his core. The primordial shadow energy was made from the combination of different kinds of conceptual energies, and the conceptual energy of death was one of them. As the aura of death came out of his core, the black lines on his body that were about to disappear surfaced once again, and he felt a very strong breath of death enveloping the surroundings. Because Evan was currently in the middle of creating his illusionary world, his mind was in complete harmony with the world, enhancing his comprehension ability to an entirely different level. So, the moment the strong aura of death engulfed the surroundings, Evan's mind started to work faster than a supercomputer, and his understanding of the conceptual energy of death began to increase at a rapid speed. Chapter 1129 Rank 3, Part 6. Impossible, Eldrich shouted with a look of disbelief on his face. The dark purple crystal above the black staff had already stopped glowing and the scene showing Evan sitting in the cave with his eyes closed was slowly fading away. In the scene, Cthoron and Eldrich could clearly see that although Evan was struck by the death curse, he somehow survived and didn't die. Moreover, Evan's clone in front of them was also fine, which indicated that the main body was completely safe. Otherwise, a clone wouldn't have been able to exist without the source of the main body. The scene showing Evan sitting in the cave soon fully disappeared, and the black staff Eldrich was holding lost its luster as if all its power was used up. Eldrich's breathing stagnated when he saw the staff lose its luster, knowing it had entered the cooldown state. Since the racial weapon has entered the cooldown state, it means the death curse was successful, then why? Eldrich looked at Evan, his eyes turning red. Why are you still alive even after being affected by the death curse? Cthoron also had an ugly look on his face and stared at Evan as if he were looking at a ghost, not understanding how he survived the curse that could even kill a peak rank 5 core evolver. Evan's clone breathed a sigh of relief when the killing effect of the racial weapon was easily neutralized and looked at Eldrich and Cthoron with cold eyes. Although the curse was easily nullified and he even received a big benefit from it, he still couldn't help but think about what might have happened if he didn't have the title, Creator of the Primordial Shadow Realm. Damn, I want to kill these two right now, but I can't do anything to them before breaking through to rank 3. Evan cursed inwardly and sat down on the chair without saying anything. At Novelban at seeing Evan not answer his question, Cthoron's face turned red with anger, but at the same time, a look of fear flashed deep within his eyes. Before entering the Void territory, he hadn't been afraid of Evan because if worse came to worst, he had planned to use the racial weapon to kill him and end this farce. But now that he found the killing effect of the racial weapon that gave him confidence was completely useless, he couldn't help but panic. In the scene he had just seen when he used the death curse, he had clearly seen an illusionary shadow above Evan's head, indicating he was in the middle of breaking through to rank 3. He is already very terrifying while being a peak rank 2 core evolver, so I can't imagine what will happen once he reaches rank 3, the bull-headed creature thought to himself, and even though he was a beginner level rank 4 core evolver, he wasn't sure if he would be able to defeat Evan once he broke through to rank 3. We need to get out of here and kill him before he breaks through, Cthoron said to Cthoron in a deep voice. Cthoron didn't say anything upon hearing Cthoron because, like him, he was also well aware of their situation and knew that if they wanted to escape from this disaster, they needed to kill Evan before he breaks through. While Cthoron and Cthoron were in the middle of thinking about how to get out of the barrier, Evan felt something and narrowed his eyes. He used the Shadow Senses skill and saw the beginner level rank 3 Griffin who had fought against Malgarid now facing a peak rank 3 Eldritch creature. Other than the Griffin, there was also a 6-meter tall, black-colored bear releasing the aura of a beginner level rank 3 Shadow Undead. The bear was another of Evan's rank 3 Shadow Undeads, whom he had created after coming out of the tomb of the Ancient. At this moment, the rank 3 Griffin and the bear were facing a peak rank 3 dog-headed Eldritch creature. The Eldritch creature was covered in deep green fire, and poisonous gas was emitting from its body, spreading outwards in all directions. The Griffin and the bear were not afraid of poison as they were undead, and the poison did not affect them, but this poisonous gas had a corrosive effect and its damage was very high. If a normal beginner level rank 3 monster were to be caught inside it, it would turn into a puddle of blood and flesh in just a few minutes. Currently, the Griffin and the bear were barely stopping the dog-headed Eldritch creature from spreading the poisonous gas over a large area so that it wouldn't affect the other Shadow Undeads and skeletons who were fighting against the other Eldritch creatures not far away. If all the skeletons and the Shadow Undeads were to be caught inside the poisonous smoke, even with the effect of Miss Spider's life chain skill, the result would be disastrous because such large-scale area of effect skills that could cause enormous damage were the best way to deal with the life chain skill. Seeing the situation wasn't good, Evan glanced at Morurok from the corner of his eye and thought of something. Although this guy is a mid-level rank 3 core evolver, his hiding ability is quite good and perfect for assassination. He said to himself and decided to give his Shadow Undeads another helping hand. Morurok, hearing Evan's voice, Morurok was startled and looked at him with a hint of fear in his eyes. From the way Cthoron reacted and the fact that Evan was still completely fine, he could easily guess that the so-called killing effect of the racial weapon hadn't worked against him. Although he didn't know many details about the racial weapon, he still knew it was the strongest weapon of the Eldronthia Empire, and being able to resist its killing effect was no small feat. Evan naturally saw the fear in Morurok's eyes but didn't care and spoke in a flat voice. I have a task for you. If you complete it, I can guarantee that you won't die in the upcoming disaster, and I will even take you away from this world. Morurok was surprised when he heard Evan's words, but when he learned what he had to do, a look of uncertainty crossed his face. However, remembering what he saw in his vision and considering Evan's powers, he gritted his teeth and finally nodded. Evan watched as Morurok's figure soon disappeared from sight and his eyes flashed with coldness. Now that the uncertain factor is gone, he turned to look at Cthoron and Cthoron and stood up. How long are you planning to pretend? Do you think I am blind and can't see what you are doing? Chapter 1130 Rank 3, Part 7, Boom, Clang, Dash. Inside the Void territory, the sounds of explosions and weapons clashing rang out everywhere as the army of undeads and eldritch creatures fought fiercely. The ground was dyed in blood, and the heavy aura of death that engulfed the surroundings made everyone tremble in fear. In the middle of the battlefield, a mid-level rank 2 eldritch creature battled against a peak rank 1 skeleton. The skeleton was no match for the eldritch creature because of the difference between their ranks, but due to the effect of life chain, the mid-level rank 2 eldritch creature couldn't destroy the skeleton and had to keep attacking it repeatedly. What kind of immortal monsters are these bastards? The mid-level rank 2 Eldritch creature screamed in despair as he pushed the skeleton back with the hammer in his hand. But just as the Eldritch creature pushed the skeleton back, an energy wave engulfed him and his eyes became dazed as if his mind had entered a trance. The moment the Eldritch creature became dazed, a black shadow flashed past him, a sharp light gleamed around his neck, and a stream of blood spurted out. Because of the sudden attack, the dazed look on the Eldritch creature's face vanished, but before he could react, the stream of blood turned into a fountain and his head dropped to the ground. The same scene repeated across the battlefield as Eldritch creatures continued to lose their minds and were beheaded by a black shadow. Eclipse, run faster. We need to kill more Eldritch creatures and secure first place. Elusia, who was sitting on Eclipse's back, said excitedly as she used her skills to put the surrounding Eldritch creatures into a state of illusion. Once the Eldritch creatures entered the illusion, Eclipse sped past them and easily beheaded them. Upon hearing Elusia, a black mist enveloped Eclipse's body and his running speed increased significantly. Soon, amid the battlefield, a woman and a panther rampaged, slaughtering thousands of high-level Eldritch creatures in just a few minutes. As the high-level Eldritch creatures fell, the army of Eldritch creatures was put at a disadvantage and the army of undeads began to slaughter the remaining creatures at an even faster pace. Some distance away from the battlefield where the Eldritch creatures and the undead were clashing, a dog-headed Eldritch creature roared in fury upon seeing the massacre and attempted to return to assist the Eldritch creatures, but was intercepted by the griffin and the beginner-level rank 3 bear. The peak rank 3 dog-headed Eldritch creature was furious at being stopped by 2 beginner-level rank 3 shadow undeads, and a powerful poisonous mist exploded outward from his body, engulfing both shadow undeads. Roar! The beginner-level rank 3 Titan bear roared loudly when it was engulfed by the poison mist and its body suddenly bulged, releasing a terrifying aura as if it could destroy hundreds of mountains with a single attack. Using all its strength, the Titan bear swung its sharp claw, unleashing a terrifying force that swept in all directions, shaking the surrounding void territory and blowing away the poison mist. At the same time, hundreds of golden lightning spears, spinning like sharp drills, appeared high in the sky, looking as if divine judgment was about to descend. Bang, 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 dash 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 dash. With booming sounds, the spinning spears tore through the void space and arrived in front of the dog-headed Eldritch creature in an instant. The dog-headed Eldritch creature's eyes shrank in fear as he sensed the terrifying destructive power of the rapidly spinning spears. Feeling the threat, the Eldritch creature used a large amount of world essence and swung his sharp bat-like claws with astonishing speed, clashing with the hundreds of lightning spears in an instant and destroying them. As the spears were destroyed, sparks of destructive golden lightning flew everywhere, and for a moment, the entire dark void territory was illuminated by the golden light. The Titan bear didn't give the dog-headed Eldritch creature any chance to recover, and while the creature was still busy stopping the spears, the bear charged forward. Its giant claw gleamed with the heavy conceptual energy of the earth, and in an instant, boom, a terrifying heavy aura erupted from the Titan bear's body as its massive claw tore through the very fabric of space, smashing down towards the dog-headed Eldritch creature's head like a hammer. The creature's face turned white when it felt the crushing pressure of the Titan bear's attack, and a beastly roar escaped its mouth. Roar! With a loud roar, the dog-headed Eldritch creature destroyed all the lightning spears in an instant and met the Titan bear's attack with its sharp bat-like claws. The claws of both monsters collided, and in the next second, the air around them compressed rapidly, forming a small ball at the point of impact where their claws met. Everything within the void territory, including the Eldritch creatures and the army of undeads, halted, bringing absolute silence. But the silence didn't last long, because a second later, the small ball of compressed air began to shake and expand outward at an alarming speed. Before anyone could react to the rapidly expanding ball, boom, a booming explosion resounded throughout the void territory. The space was completely ripped apart, and both the dog-headed Eldritch creature and the Titan bear were blown hundreds of meters away from each other. The Eldritch creature's hand turned into a mist of blood in midair, and the right side of its body was completely obliterated. Bang! With a loud crash, the Eldritch creature slammed into the ground, rolling like a ragdoll. But despite the right side of its body being blown away, its aura didn't diminish much as the tendrils of flesh began to move on their own, healing its body at a rapid pace, and the destroyed flesh and bones regenerated visibly to the naked eye. Compared to him, the Titan bear didn't suffer any injuries due to the life chain skill, and after crashing to the ground, it immediately stood up. However, the Titan bear did not dare to relax, knowing that despite the Eldritch creature's serious-looking injury, It was healing quickly and still in top condition. All the shadow undeads knew that killing a peak rank 3 Eldritch creature wasn't easy with their current rank, so their task was to delay it as long as possible until other shadow undead arrived for support. Just as the Griffin and Titan Bear were about to engage the dog-headed Eldritch creature again, a figure shrouded in black smoke appeared behind it. The dog-headed creature was slightly distracted after losing the right side of its body, and most of its focus was on the 2 rank 3 shadow undeads in front of it. Because of this, it couldn't react in time when the figure shrouded in black smoke suddenly appeared behind it, and before it could respond, a sharp light flashed and a dagger was plunged deep into its throat. The dog-headed Eldritch creature struggled and swung his arm backwards in an attempt to capture Morurok, who had suddenly attacked him. But Morurok reacted quickly and dissolved into a puff of black smoke, vanishing from there. The Eldritch creature tried to pull out the dagger from its throat, but suddenly, an explosion of fire erupted from the dagger, and its head exploded like a watermelon, completely erasing its life force. Chapter 1131 Rank 3, Part 8. How long are you planning to pretend? Do you think I am blind and can't see what you are doing? When Eldrich and Cthoron heard Evan's words, they were startled and stopped discussing how to break free from the barrier. They looked at Evan with confusion on their faces, as if they couldn't understand what he was talking about. Evan's expression remained unchanged when he saw their confused looks, and he spoke while staring directly at Cthoron. I didn't expect to meet a rune master here. Upon hearing Evan's words, Cthoron and Eldrich stared at him for a few seconds before the confused expressions on their faces disappeared, replaced by cold, murderous looks. How did you find out? Cthoron asked in a cold voice. I also have some experience with runes, so after seeing the way you were moving your hooves in that strange manner, it was not difficult to guess, Evan replied calmly, his eyes fixed on Cthoron's lower body, which was similar to that of a horse, and how he was secretly moving his hooves as if trying to engrave something on the ground. Cthoron was shocked when he heard Evan mention he had some experience with runes. Although he couldn't determine Evan's real age, he could tell from his tremendous life force that he was less than 100 years old. You are already about to reach rank 3 at such a young age, and now you are saying you even have experience with runes. Cthoron muttered with a dazed expression, feeling extremely shocked. Eldrich was also stunned upon hearing Evan. Although he didn't know much about runes, he had tried to learn a few things from Cthoron in the past but failed to grasp anything, so he understood how difficult it was to gain any experience with runes. Evan looked at the shocked expressions of Cthoron and Eldrich, and though his expression didn't change, inwardly, he was very satisfied with the result of his bullshit. Earlier, when he noticed Cthoron's hooves moving on the ground in a strange manner, he felt these movements were somewhat familiar, recalling how Azeroth had opened the Pillar of Light inside the tomb of the Ancient. To open the Pillar of Light and allow him to go in, Azeroth had created some runes, and the movements of Cthoron's hooves were similar to those. Of course, they were just similar, indicating he was trying to create some runes, not the same runes Azeroth had used. The runes Azeroth used to open the Pillar of Light were primordial runes, which are the most powerful runes in the world, and the runes Cthoron was attempting to create couldn't compare to them. Although these runes couldn't compare to primordial runes, Evan still couldn't let them succeed, so he had to stop them somehow. His most important task now was to hold off Cthoron and Eldrich for about 3 more hours so that he could successfully reach rank 3. To distract them, he decided to act as though he knew everything they were doing when in reality, he only knew they were trying to create some kind of rune and nothing else. If you think you can use these low-level runes to break free, you are both dreaming, he said with a sneer on his face. Even if you used a primordial rune, it would still take you a long time to break the barrier. Cthoron's eyes trembled when he heard the words, primordial runes, and his breathing stagnated. He tried his best to maintain his composure and asked in a trembling voice. You have information about the primordial runes? Evan was very satisfied with Cthoron's reaction, but he didn't show any emotion and asked with a frown. Why are you asking if I have information about the primordial rune? Wait a second, don't tell me you are a rune master, but you don't even know a single primordial rune? Hearing Evan's shocked voice, Cthoron was at a loss for words and didn't know how to respond. He wanted to shout that primordial runes weren't some vegetables that you could just buy in a market, but before he could say anything, Evan spoke again. No wonder you are using such a low-level rune to break free from the barrier. I thought you were just conserving energy, which is why you didn't use primordial runes, but I didn't expect. He said with a shake of his head as if disappointed by their incompetence. Cthoron's face turned ugly when he saw the way Evan was looking at him, and if it weren't for the barrier between them, he would have already ripped him apart. In the Eldronthia Empire, he was the best rune master, so being looked down upon in such a way irritated him immensely. Eldrich also glared at Evan with cold eyes, but before they could say anything, Evan said something that surprised them both. How about this? I will show you a primordial rune, and you answer a few of my questions. Primordial rune. Cthoron's heart skipped a beat when he heard Evan, but soon a sneer appeared on his face. You are just a mere clone. Do you think I don't know anything about the primordial runes? Forget about you. Even with your real body, I am certain you cannot handle the power of a primordial rune. Cthoron was still in the middle of speaking when Evan's clone suddenly pulled up the shirt he was wearing, revealing the rune of evolution engraved on his chest. Seeing the rune on Evan's chest, Cthoron's eyes nearly popped out of their sockets, and he even forgot to breathe. What do you think? If you answer my questions, I will let you study this primordial rune. You also know it's pointless to struggle and try to break free from this barrier. Instead of trying to break it, you should focus on increasing your strength as much as possible before I break through to rank 3, because once I do. He smiled coldly. You won't even get a chance to struggle if you don't have enough strength. Hearing Evan, Cthoron and Eldrich felt a surge of anger. They were beginner-level rank 4 core evolvers, and from Evan's words, it was clear he didn't take them seriously. But despite their anger, they knew this wasn't the time to act rashly. How can we trust that you will let me study that primordial rune after we answer your questions? Cthoron asked after a moment. Evan didn't respond immediately. Instead, he simply ripped the skin where the rune of evolution was located and threw it in front of the barrier, allowing them to see it clearly. Do you believe me now? He asked in a low voice. Seeing Evan's action, Cthoron glanced at Eldrich from the corner of his eye, and after a few seconds, finally nodded his head. What do you want to ask? What is this place? Evan immediately asked. Eldrich raised an eyebrow when he heard the question and responded in a flat voice. It's Velgath world. Don't tell me you don't even know that? Evan shook his head when he heard Eldrich and said in a low voice. Let me rephrase my question. Is this place the origin universe? Chapter 1132 Rank 3, Part 9. Let me rephrase my question. Is this place the origin universe? Eldrich raised an eyebrow at Evan's question. He glanced at Cthoron from the corner of his eye and noticed his entire focus was on the rune of evolution. After a moment of contemplation, instead of answering Evan, he posed another question. Before I answer your question, tell me how you came here. Evan wasn't surprised by Eldrich's question and responded in a calm voice. I found a dungeon portal in a remote area in my world, and when I went in to explore the dungeon, I was sent here. Dungeon portal. Eldrich was stunned by Evan's answer. Even Cthoron, who had been entirely focused on the rune of evolution, raised his head and looked at him with a strange expression. Does that mean he didn't come here for the world passage but actually accidentally sent here? Cthoron and Eldrich thought simultaneously. A few days ago, when they discovered Evan, they assumed he had come to their world to destroy the world passage. But if what Evan just said was true, then their previous speculation was completely wrong. What kind of portal was it that sent you here? Eldrich asked after a moment of silence. Hearing Eldrich, Evan shook his head and responded flatly. I think you are forgetting something. I am the one asking the questions, not you. Eldrich narrowed his eyes upon hearing Evan, but when he realized Evan had no intention of answering his question, he finally spoke. The answer to your question is both yes and no. Yes and no? Evan looked at Eldrich with a look of confusion evident on his face. We are currently in Velgath world. It's an artificially created world located between the origin universe and the chaotic zone. Although it's not exactly in the origin universe, it's very, very close to it. So, in a sense, you can say we are in the origin universe but at the same time not. Evan raised an eyebrow at the mention of new terms and asked with interest. What is this chaotic zone? You don't even know what the chaotic zone is? Eldrich looked at Evan as if he were a country bumpkin, his expression a mix of disbelief and condescension. Evan's expression remained unchanged despite Eldrich's strange gaze. Without a word, he stretched out his hand to retrieve the rune of evolution that Cthoron was still studying. Seeing Evan's action, Eldrich's expression changed and he quickly spoke. The chaotic zone is a forbidden area filled with endless chaotic energy. It's a place that was formed when the origin universe was shattered during the war between the primordials. Evan's heart skipped a beat at Eldrich's words and he immediately recalled what Azeroth had told him when he had asked him about the origin universe in the Tomb of the Ancient. The origin universe is our home. A home that we destroyed with our own hands. Azeroth's words echoed in his mind, and for some reason, Evan felt a sudden urge to curse. Damn it, every single F***C King thing related to destruction seems to lead back to this insane guy, he thought to himself, taking a deep breath to steady his emotions. How was the origin universe shattered? He asked after calming down. Didn't I say earlier? It was shattered because of the war between the primordials. Eldrich replied coldly. I mean, the universe did not just shatter because they started fighting, right? There must have been a significant event that led to the destruction. That's what I'm asking about. Eldrich remained silent for a moment as if debating whether he should answer Evan's question. But when he saw Evan stretch out his hand again to take back the rune of evolution, he cursed inwardly and answered. I am not sure, but I have heard that during the war, someone destroyed the universal tree, which led to the destruction of the origin universe. Why am I not even surprised? Evan said to himself, looking at Eldrich without any expression on his face. He recalled the memory he had seen when he first encountered the world tree in the closed world of the Dryads, and the suspicion that had gnawed at him ever since. That the world tree was somehow connected to the universal tree that Azeroth had destroyed, now solidified into certainty. If the world tree is related to the universal tree, then what about the tree of life? Is it also somehow connected to the universal tree? Evan pondered with a thoughtful look on his face. However, because he had never seen the tree of life with his own eyes, he couldn't draw any definitive conclusions, so he shifted his attention back to Eldrich. What exactly are these primordials you spoke about? Eldrich shrugged his shoulders when he heard Evan's question and shook his head. I don't know who or what they are. I have only heard that they are the most powerful beings in existence. Evan was not surprised by Eldrich's response, as he had expected that gaining information about the primordials would not be easy, so he changed his line of questioning. Have you ever heard the name Azeroth? The moment Evan uttered the name, for some reason, he felt a chill run down his spine as if an unseen force was observing him with deep hostility. But before he could fully process the sensation, the blood of Doombringer within his body surged, boiling with intensity, and the sense of danger vanished as quickly as it had appeared. Eldrich didn't notice the change in Evan's expression and frowned at the question. Azeroth, I had never Eldrich had just spoken when his expression suddenly changed and his face went pale as his aura dropped sharply. Without warning, he started coughing up blood and a look of deep fear appeared on his face. Evan looked at Eldrich's miserable figure and felt a chill run down his spine. What the hell is going on here? Chapter 1133 Rank 3, Part 10. What the hell is going on here? Evan felt a chill run down his spine as he watched Eldrich, who looked as if he had just been struck by a full power attack from a beginner-level Rank 4 core evolver. Eldrich continued to cough up blood, his face contorted in pain, and his aura plummeted sharply, indicating he was seriously injured. Did he get injured simply because he spoke his name? Evan's mind raced as he recalled the dangerous sensation that had surged through him earlier when he mentioned Azeroth's name. In Utopia, he had heard many people mentioning Azeroth's name, such as Eldrich, who had spoken it when they met in the Tomb of the Ancient, but those people didn't suffer any kind of injury. This left Evan puzzled about what had happened to Eldrich and why he felt such a dangerous presence earlier when the name was spoken. Could it be because I am so close to the origin universe? He wondered, remembering that it was Azeroth who destroyed the universal tree, shattering the origin universe as a result. What did you do to him? Evan was still lost in thought when he heard Nithor's cold voice that was tinged with fear. Though most of Nithor's attention had been on the rune of evolution, he had still been listening to the conversation, and he hadn't seen Evan make any move that could have caused Eldrich's sudden injury. This realization frightened him because, similar to Eldrich, he was also a beginner-level Rank 4 core evolver, and the thought that Evan could injure someone of his caliber without even noticing filled Nithor with dread. Evan narrowed his eyes when he heard Nithor, and after thinking for a while, he spoke in a low voice. My name is Azeroth, Azir. Nithor was confused by Evan's statement and subconsciously wanted to repeat the same name, but midway through speaking, his instincts screamed in warning and he abruptly stopped. At the same moment, he remembered how Eldrich had spoken the same name just before he suddenly got injured, and a cold sweat broke out on Nithor's forehead. Whose name is this? Nithor asked in a trembling voice. Even though he hadn't fully spoken the name, he still felt a deep sense of crisis earlier, as if the entire world wanted to punish him for trying to speak that name. Evan ignored Nithor's question and instead focused on his reaction. When he saw Nithor abruptly stop mid-sentence and display a terrified expression, he became certain that Nithor had also felt the danger when trying to speak Azeroth's name. What kind of nonsense is this? From the danger I sensed earlier, I could tell that whoever or whatever tried to attack me was filled with endless hatred. Although I am not entirely sure, I have a feeling it's something related to the origin universe, and the moment I go there, I will be facing endless troubles. Evan thought with a dark look on his face as he silently cursed Azeroth for making his life so difficult. He took several deep breaths to calm down and shook his head. Forget it, I have no plans to go to the Origin universe anytime soon. For now, I just want to kill Emperor Velgath and get back to Utopia as quickly as possible. Evan glanced back at Eldrich, who was still struggling to stand, and for a moment, he felt a twisted sense of satisfaction. With Eldrich seriously injured, he would likely focus on recovering rather than trying to break the barrier before Evan could advance to rank 3. This situation played perfectly in Evan's favor. He still had many questions he wanted to ask, but from Nithor's expression, it was clear that he wouldn't be answering anything further. The fear that he might fall into the same trap as Eldrich and be seriously injured by merely answering questions was evident on his face. What a pity. I wanted to ask them about the lost world that Zaltor mentioned when he first saw me, but it seems that we'll have to wait until things settle down. Evan thought to himself, deciding he would ask Morurok about this matter later on. Although Morurok wouldn't know as much as Nithor and Eldrich due to his lower position, he might still be able to provide some basic information. Though, even without them telling me anything, I can already guess what the lost world refers to. Evan thought inwardly and sighed deeply. Due to his injury, Eldrich took a healing pill and focused on refining it, trying to heal his wounds as much as possible without uttering a word. Nithor also remained silent, his gaze fixed warily on Evan, fearing that he might take advantage of Eldrich's weakened state to launch an attack. If Eldrich died here, Nithor's own chances of survival would decrease drastically. Because of the tension, for the next hour, no one spoke. Evan continued to monitor the situation of his shadow undeads, who finally began to struggle. In the last few hours, his shadow undeads and skeletons had sustained a large amount of damage, and even with the life chain ability, the strain was starting to show. As the damage was divided among everyone equally, the lower-level skeletons began to crumble due to their lack of endurance compared to the higher-ranking shadow undeads and skeletons. But Evan didn't concern himself too much with the situation. Even though his shadow undeads and skeletons were no longer able to kill the Eldritch creatures as easily as before, their disregard for injuries made it feasible for them to hold back the Eldritch creatures from causing problems for him. As he kept an eye on the ongoing fight, an idea suddenly sparked in Evan's mind, causing his eyes to light up. I can try it, he muttered under his breath and quickly sent a message to one of the teams of the shadow undeads. After sending the message, he waited quietly. About 10 minutes later, Nithor noticed a peak rank 2 Eldritch creature rushing towards them. Lord Eldrich, Lord Nithor. The creature's eyes lit up upon seeing the 2 rank 4 core evolvers, and it moved towards them with urgency. As Nithor observed the Eldritch creature rushing towards them, a deep sense of unease settled in his heart. He turned to look at Evan, and when he noticed the look of expectation on Evan's face as he watched the approaching creature, a chill ran down his spine. Chapter 1134 Rank 3, Part 11. When Nithor noticed the cold smile on Evan's face, he immediately understood something was wrong and shouted loudly, trying to warn the rank 2 Eldritch creature rushing toward them. However, as soon as he shouted, he realized that for some reason, his voice couldn't travel beyond the barrier like before and no one outside could hear him. Nithor's face changed when he realized this, and he looked at Evan, only to see him holding a slightly glowing formation plate. Just stand there and watch the show, Evan said to him with a smile on his face as he stood up. He watched as the Eldritch creature rushed toward the barrier, stopping about 100 meters away from it. The Eldritch creature stared at the barrier for a moment before shifting his attention to Evan, who held the formation plate in his hands. Gorvolth was a peak rank 2 Eldritch creature, and because Evan was just a clone, his aura was far weaker than the Eldritch creature. Although the Eldritch creature sensed that Evan wasn't ordinary and gave off a vague threatening aura, he still felt confident that he could escape if something went wrong. If you give me that formation plate, I can let you go. Gorvolth spoke in a cold voice and secretly began preparing his most powerful attack to blast away Evan, as he knew it was impossible for Evan to give up the formation plate so easily. All right. However, when he heard Evan's next word and saw him extending his hand forward to give him the formation plate, he was stunned. Evan's response was completely out of his expectations, and for a moment, Gorvolth even forgot about the attack he was preparing, which then dissipated. Only after his attack faded did Gorvolth snap back to reality and ask in a doubtful voice, "What did you just say?" Evan remained calm when he heard Gorvolth's question and replied in a flat voice. "I can give you this formation plate, but," he said, and his eyes flashed with a strange light. "But before I give it to you, you will have to answer one of my questions." Although Nithor's voice couldn't escape the barrier, he could still hear the conversation between Evan and Gorvolth, and when he heard Evan wanted to ask a question, his face turned ugly as he already knew what was going to happen next. Gorvolth didn't know what was going on, so when he heard Evan's words, he narrowed his eyes. Although he felt things might not be as simple as they seemed, he still decided to cooperate for now and nodded his head. "What do you want to ask?" A brilliant smile appeared on Evan's face when he saw Gorvolth agree to his suggestion, and he immediately asked, "Do you know the legendary Azroth?" Legendary Azroth. Gorvolth raised an eyebrow when he heard Evan, but before he could say anything else, a dreadful feeling engulfed him, and his face turned pale. Similar to Eldrich, his aura dropped sharply and he began coughing blood uncontrollably. Evan almost laughed out loud when he saw this scene, and a joyful expression appeared on his face. Finally, the name of that bastard is of some use," he said with a grin on his face as he watched Gorvolth struggle on the ground, bleeding from his eyes, nose, and mouth. The attack he received was comparable to the full power strike of a peak rank 2 core evolver. "It seems the attack you receive after chanting the name of that blasphemer is equivalent to your rank," Evan muttered thoughtfully, realizing that whatever entity attacked people for saying Azroth's name only wanted to warn them. If it had wanted to kill those who spoke Azroth's name, it could have sent an attack of the same intensity as that Eldrich received, and Gorvolth would have died. But Gorvolth just received an attack that severely injured him, as if warning him not to speak that name again. "Well, I think I can use this method to kill some Eldritch creatures to relieve my boredom," Evan muttered and drew a sword from his shadow storage. He took a step forward and instantly appeared in front of Gorvolth, who was still on the ground. Before Gorvolth could react, a sharp flash of light appeared, and his head was severed from his body. Cthoron watched everything that happened, and a cold sweat broke out on his forehead. What kind of taboo name is this? He thought with a pale look on his face. After killing Gorvolth, Evan swiftly stored his body in his shadow storage and used his shadow senses to send a message to his shadow undeads, instructing them to allow a high-level Eldritch creature to enter the deeper area of the Void territory every 5 minutes. Evan's clone waited patiently after delivering the message, and before long, he spotted a mid-level rank 2 Eldritch creature charging toward him. Evan cast a glance at Cthoron, who watched the scene unfold with despair etched on his face, and just like with Gorvolth, Evan tricked the Eldritch creature into uttering Azroth's name and killed it effortlessly. For the next 2 hours, Evan's clone continued to kill any Eldritch creature that approached him by exploiting Azroth's name. "Just a few more minutes and it will be over," the clone muttered quietly as he stored the body of another rank 2 Eldritch creature in his shadow storage, his gaze turning toward the deeper part of the Void territory. Relief began to wash over him, knowing Evan was close to breaking through to rank 3. But then, rumble, the entire Void territory suddenly began to tremble violently, as if the world itself was rebelling against it. Evan frowned when he saw this and his heart sank as he stared at the shaking Void. Someone even more powerful than Cthoron and Eldrich is attacking the Void territory from outside. He muttered under his breath as his mind raced at an incredible speed. In less than 2 seconds, countless thoughts raced through his mind, and without hesitation, he vanished from where he stood, reappearing in the midst of a battlefield where his shadow undeads and the Eldritch creatures were locked in combat. Upon arriving, Evan did not engage the Eldritch creatures. Instead, he moved swiftly across the battlefield, storing the bodies of the slain Eldritch creatures inside his shadow storage. Once the Void territory was destroyed, the area he had pulled into the Void would return to Azregoth world, where the bodies of the Eldritch creatures would be absorbed by the planet. Evan knew that if he wanted to complete the 3 tasks that he had received, he would have to face millions of Eldritch creatures and the terrifying Eldritch horrors, so there was no way he could let these bodies slip away that would become his soldiers in future. Chapter 1135 Rank 3, Part 12. While the entire Void territory was shaking as if the entire world was rioting against it, and Evan's shadow clone was collecting all the dead bodies of the Eldritch creatures to turn them into his future shadow undeads, Evan was sitting in the cave with his eyes closed. A dense black aura, releasing a strong breath of death, surrounded him, and everything around him had withered. The rocks were filled with cracks as if they would turn into dust with a slight touch, and the cave walls were slowly disintegrating as if they had reached their limit. Above Evan's head, the illusory shadow of the world began to solidify, and inside the world, other than the deep purple void energy, a small spark of black energy, which released a strong aura of death, could be seen. The area of the illusory world was far greater than before, and if someone entered it, they would see that it had already expanded to more than 900 kilometers in diameter, just 100 kilometers away from reaching the 1,000-kilometer mark. But after reaching 900 kilometers, the world stopped expanding as the power of the Solarian Sunfruit had already run out. Although the void territory was shaking violently as if it would be destroyed at any moment, Evan didn't react and kept his eyes closed. In order to keep the void territory intact, the conceptual energy of the void within his core was rapidly decreasing, and it wouldn't be long before he ran out of void energy. Just when Evan had only around 10% of his void energy left, the black aura of death that surrounded him churned wildly and sank inside his body. As the aura of death sank inside his body, the black lines that had appeared on his body due to the death curse launched by Eldrich began to disappear. At the same time, the illusory world above his head solidified rapidly, and a field similar to a zone emerged from the illusory world. After merging with the illusory world, the power of Evan's zone increased greatly compared to before, and as the illusory world above him solidified, its power increased even more. Inside the dark purple void zone, from time to time, a deep orange-colored flame, the cosmic solar flame integrated into his zone by consuming the Solarian sunfruit, erupted, making the void zone even more powerful. Crack, crack, dash 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 dash. Suddenly, some cracks appeared in the pitch-black dark sky as if the sky was about to shatter, and the void territory was on the verge of collapse. But even when the void territory was on the verge of collapse, Evan didn't open his eyes. His aura was gradually becoming stronger and stronger, and the primordial monarch core inside his body was shining like a small universe. Because the small void ring that had previously covered his core had merged with his core now contained many small, twinkling star-like lights, and the number of stars within it was rapidly increasing. With the appearance of each star, Evan's aura was becoming more and more powerful, and just by his mere presence, the space around him was shaking. Crack, crack, crack. As Evan was about to complete his breakthrough, a large section of the upper void territory collapsed, revealing the red-orange sky of the Velgath world. Morurok, Cthoron, and the others within the void territory were shocked when the upper area of the territory collapsed, and they raised their heads to look up. As they looked up, all of them were stunned, but soon, an ecstatic look appeared on Cthoron and the other Eldritch creatures' faces as they saw a giant phantom of a majestic figure. The phantom of the Eldritch creature had a bulky human-like figure, with 2 long ears that resembled elephant ears and a terrifying aura, far stronger than Cthoron and Eldrich was emanating from him. "Your Majesty," Cthoron said, his voice filled with joy as he sighed in relief. He looked deep into the void territory, and a sneer appeared on his face. "Now that His Majesty is here, that invader is as good as dead," he said coldly, looking at the giant phantom who was gazing down from the sky. The phantom of Emperor Velgath noticed Cthoron and Eldrich, who were trapped inside the barrier, as well as the Eldritch creatures who were fighting against the army of undeads. Seeing that the number of Eldritch creatures still alive was less than 400,000, even Emperor Velgath couldn't help but raise an eyebrow, and his eyes fell on Evan, who was sitting in the cave, still in the midst of his breakthrough. What a strong aura! Emperor Velgath narrowed his eyes when he sensed Evan's power, and a cold look flashed in his gaze. Although Evan was still in the middle of his breakthrough and hadn't yet completed it, Emperor Velgath could still feel a terrifying aura emanating from him. He must die here, otherwise, things will become complicated in the future. Emperor Velgath muttered in a low voice, and with a cold expression, he pressed down with his hand, intending to kill Evan and eliminate future troubles. The phantom of Emperor Velgath was thousands of meters tall, so when he pressed down with his palm, it appeared as if the entire sky was collapsing, and a heavy aura blanketed the entire void territory. Evan, who was sitting with his eyes closed, felt a mountain-like pressure descend upon him, and a deep sense of crisis engulfed him. However, despite the overwhelming feeling of danger, he did not open his eyes because he was at a critical moment in solidifying his illusionary world. Boom! Just as the giant palm was only 100 meters away from him, a booming sound echoed. The ceiling of the cave Evan was in collapsed, and a beam of golden light shot toward the sky with unstoppable momentum. A terrifying aura of destruction spread in all directions, and the entire void territory was instantly obliterated, causing the space to revert back to the Velgath world. The expression on the phantom of Emperor Velgath changed drastically when he sensed the destructive aura radiating from the golden light, and he tried to retract his palm, but before he could, a sharp tearing sound echoed as the golden light ripped through the massive palm, and in the next second, boom, a torrent of destructive energy surged outward, hurling the phantom of Emperor Velgath hundreds of meters away. Chapter 1136, Rank 3, Part 13. The thousands of meters tall phantom of Emperor Velgath was pushed back by the beam of golden light, and his palm exploded into millions of light particles that rained down from the sky like shooting stars. In midair, Evan's shadow clone looked at the falling light particles while holding the halberd of destruction with a serious look on his face. Earlier, Emperor Velgath hadn't used any skills to boost his power and had attacked casually with his palm, but even then, when he clashed with it using the halberd of destruction, he felt as if his entire body was about to shatter. If it hadn't been for the destructive power of the halberd, the clone would have been blown apart into a bloody mist. He is just a phantom, not even the real thing, yet his power is nearly comparable to a mid or peak rank 4 core evolver. Evan thought inwardly as he looked at the phantom, who had already stabilized himself and was staring at him, or rather, at the halberd in his hands with narrowed eyes. Such a strong aura of destruction. The phantom of Emperor Velgath muttered in a low voice, a deep frown forming on his face as if he was lost in thought. Could it be? A sudden thought flashed through his mind, and his eyes shrank. Whoosh! Suddenly, the world essence of the Azragoth world surged toward the phantom, and his palm, which had been blown apart by the halberd of destruction, began regenerating at an astonishing speed as though the world itself was helping him. Evan's eyes narrowed when he saw this, and a flash of anxiety crossed his face. This bastard, couldn't he have waited a few more minutes before showing up? He cursed inwardly, and the halberd in his hand began to glow madly as if it were ready to destroy everything. Where did you get that weapon? Surprisingly, Emperor Velgath didn't attack after regenerating his palm but instead posed a question. Evan raised an eyebrow at this unexpected pause, but he welcomed the delay. He sighed in relief and replied in a calm voice, I received it as a reward after clearing a dungeon in my world. A reward for clearing a dungeon. Emperor Velgath's expression darkened and a murderous aura began to seep from his phantom. Do you take me for a fool? He asked in a cold voice. Evan's heart skipped a beat when he felt the intense murderous intent radiating from the Emperor. He needed to stall for time, and from Velgath's expression, he knew that if his answer wasn't convincing, the Emperor would attack him immediately. Damn, I don't want to mention the tomb of the ancient. According to Azeroth, the thing sealed there is the true source of Eldritch energy, and I don't know if these Eldritch creatures are aware of it. He thought to himself, and after a brief moment of consideration, he spoke in a low voice. I found this weapon in a secret realm. A flicker of interest passed through Emperor Velgath's eyes when he heard Evan's words, and he immediately asked, what kind of secret realm was it? It was just a normal secret realm where only those below rank 3 could enter, Evan replied, and before Emperor Velgath could ask anything else, he quickly continued. Can I also ask you a question? Cthoron, who was still trapped within the barrier, felt his heart skip a beat when he heard Evan speak. He wanted to warn Emperor Velgath that it was a trap, but his voice could not pass through the barrier. Emperor Velgath didn't seem angry at Evan's question. Instead, he nodded calmly. What do you want to ask? Got you. A sly smile appeared on Evan's face and he asked in a serious voice, have you ever heard the name of the legendary Azeroth? Emperor Velgath was curious about what Evan wanted to ask him, but when he heard Azeroth's name, his eyes shrank to the size of needles and a look of shock appeared on his face. How can you speak that name? He said in a voice tinged with fear, but then, he quickly shook his head. It's over for you. You are just a clone. It's impossible for you to survive the backlash of speaking that forbidden name. Evan froze when he heard Emperor Velgath's words and he realized something. He knew about Azeroth. The thought hit him like a hammer, and he opened his mouth to ask more, but before he could, how are you still fine? Velgath asked in a voice filled with disbelief as though he just witnessed the impossible. Evan's mouth twitched when he noticed the Emperor was staring at him as if he was some kind of ghost. He swallowed the questions he wanted to ask, knowing full well he couldn't tell Velgath that something within his Doombringer bloodline was shielding him from harm. Velgath's expression darkened when Evan remained silent, and for a moment, he seemed ready to strike, but then, his entire body stiffened as if he found something. A weapon surging with destructive energy, a demonic aura clinging to his very form, and those sharp ears. Velgath's thoughts raced, his face hardening as if he had recognized something terrible. Evan noticed the change, the way Velgath's gaze shifted from confusion to wariness as though he was afraid of him. What is going on? Evan frowned when he saw the change in Velgath's expressions and for some reason, felt very uneasy. Suddenly, Emperor Velgath's phantom lunged forward, but instead of attacking him, it turned toward the shimmering barrier trapping Cthoron and Eldrich. The barrier was already very weak due to the low energy and with just a single strike, Emperor Velgath shattered it effortlessly. Thank you, your ma. Cthoron and Eldrich barely had time to express their gratitude before Velgath's massive hand wrapped around them and picked them up. After grabbing Eldrich and Cthoron, Emperor Velgath looked at Evan for a moment and without saying anything, he flew away from there. Evan was confused because of the sudden turn of events and watched as the figure of Emperor Velgath vanished into the distance. After a full minute of silence, he finally came back to his senses and only one thought came to his mind. Just what the hell is going on? Chapter 1137 Rank 3, Part 14, Last. What the foo *k just happened? Evan stood in midair with a baffled look on his face as he watched the phantom of Emperor Velgath disappear over the horizon. He recalled Emperor Velgath's expression when he mentioned Azeroth's name, and for some reason, a slight unease crept into his heart. This guy definitely knows about Azeroth, and from the way he acted at the end, it seems like he recognized my appearance. Evan muttered with a frown, rubbing his eyebrows. From the way he acted and left without doing anything, I can't tell whether it's a good thing or not, he thought as his eyes fell on the remaining Eldritch creatures abandoned by Emperor Velgath. Kill them, he ordered his shadow undeads and skeletons as he landed atop the broken ceiling of the cave where Evan's true body was. Upon receiving his order, the shadow undeads, who had stopped fighting due to the appearance of Emperor Velgath, resumed their attack. However, since Emperor Velgath had taken away Cthoron and Eldrich, all the Eldritch creatures had lost their will to fight. Now that the void territory that had trapped them was destroyed, they began fleeing in all directions. The shadow undeads and skeletons relentlessly attacked the Eldritch creatures, but due to the overwhelming difference in numbers, many Eldritch creatures managed to escape. Evan's shadow clone didn't care about the fleeing Eldritch creatures since most of the high-level ones had already been killed by him and his undeads. The creatures that escaped were mostly rank 1 or lower and couldn't pose a threat to him. Moreover, now that the void territory was destroyed, even if he killed them, they would be absorbed by the world, preventing him from turning them into shadow undeads, so there was no benefit in pursuing them. As his shadow undeads and skeletons cleaned up the battlefield, boom! A deafening explosion echoed across hundreds of kilometers, and a powerful aura that distorted space spread in all directions. Evan's shadow clone, who stood atop the destroyed cave, was blown to pieces instantly under the pressure of the terrifying aura. Before he completely disintegrated, anyone could see him rolling his eyes as if speechless at the way he was destroyed. Inside the cave, Evan, who had been sitting with his eyes closed, opened them, and the aura emanating from his body became even more terrifying. The phantom of the illusionary world above his head had fully solidified, revealing a dark purple world with hints of black swirling within. Suddenly, the image of the illusionary world trembled and sank into his body. As the illusionary world merged within him, his aura stabilized completely, and a faint smile appeared on his lips. Finally, rank 3, he said to himself, and the next moment, many notifications flashed before his eyes. In the Eldronthia Empire, deep within the Red Castle built atop the giant skull of a monstrous beast, a man standing nearly 3 meters tall opened his eyes. The man had a bulky, humanoid body, but his skin was purple-brown in color. His face was nearly 3 times the size of a normal human's, and his ears, reminiscent of an elephant's, drooped downwards all the way to his neck like lumps of brown flesh. In front of the man, a portal nearly 10 meters high and 5 meters wide glowed faintly. The portal rested atop an altar and was surrounded by hundreds of crystals, each filled with a vast amount of energy. When Emperor Velgath opened his eyes, a look of shock flashed across his face, and for a moment, he lost control of his powers. His aura, that of a beginner-level rank 5 core evolver, surged out, shaking the entire castle. Finally, he is finally here, he said in a trembling voice, making it difficult to tell whether he was shocked or happy. We have been stuck in this world for who knows how many years. I had long since lost hope of returning to the Origin universe, but he's shown up at the critical moment, just when we were about to make a desperate attempt to escape from here. Emperor Velgath rose from his throne and disappeared from the chamber where the world passage was located. In an instant, he reappeared in a different room, one with another altar. However, this altar was far more complex than the one where the world passage had been. Emperor Velgath approached the altar but stopped abruptly, a frown forming on his face. Is it the right time to contact them? He muttered, a look of hesitation crossing his features. He considered the cruel nature of the ones he contemplated contacting, and after a moment of indecision, he shook his head and turned away from the altar. Just in case, I should make some preparations and ensure that I am not mistaken before contacting them, Emperor Velgath muttered to himself before disappearing from the room. He reappeared in the chamber where the world passage was located and walked deeper inside. After about a minute, he stopped in front of a wall and pressed his palm against it. As soon as he did, runes appeared on the wall, and suddenly, the wall split open, revealing a hidden room. Emperor Velgath stepped inside, and the passage closed behind him. Upon entering the room, he saw a nearly 5-meter-tall stone monument, glowing faintly. Without hesitation, he approached the monument, took out a sword, and cut his palm, allowing a small amount of blood to drip onto the stone. As the blood touched the monument, a strange aura began to emanate from it, and a powerful spiritual pressure filled the entire room. Emperor Velgath lowered his head as the spiritual pressure engulfed him and took a few steps back from the monument. Whoosh! Suddenly, a burst of white light erupted from the monument, and an illusory figure of a man, who bore some resemblance to Emperor Velgath, appeared above it. Seeing the figure, Emperor Velgath bowed deeply and said in a respectful voice, "Father." Chapter 1138 Pawns. Father. Seeing the illusionary figure that emerged from the monument, Emperor Velgath bowed deeply. The illusionary figure opened his eyes upon hearing Emperor Velgath and looked at him without saying anything. After a minute of silence, the figure sighed and asked, "Has he finally appeared?" Emperor Velgath was surprised when he heard Votharian's words, but still nodded his head. Seeing Velgath nodding, Votharian sighed once again. "Did you contact them?" he asked in a serious voice. Emperor Velgath shook his head when he heard Votharian's question and stretched out his palm, condensing Evan's image in midair. "Before contacting them, I want to make sure I am not mistaken, which is why I came to find you." Votharian looked at the image that Emperor Velgath condensed, and upon seeing it, although he was mentally prepared, he still couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. "It's really him," he said in a low voice, then asked seriously, "Tell me everything that happened." Emperor Velgath dispersed Evan's image and recounted everything that had happened since Evan arrived in Azragoth world. When Emperor Velgath mentioned the black monsters, a look of fear flashed in Votharian's eyes as if he remembered something terrible, and his body shuddered. Emperor Velgath noticed the change in his expression but said nothing and continued. When he finished telling everything, Votharian took a deep breath and nodded. "It's good that you didn't kill or interrupt him during his breakthrough. We still don't know if they want him alive or dead. If something unexpected had happened to him, those guys wouldn't have let you off." Emperor Velgath clenched his fists when he heard Votharian's words, but in the end, he sighed and a helpless look flashed in his eyes. "What should I do next?" he asked after a moment of silence. "It's already been hundreds of thousands of years since we were exiled in the chaotic zone to wait for that guy to appear. Now that he has finally appeared, we should inform them, but..." Votharian paused for a few seconds before continuing. "But I don't know if they still remember us. If they have forgotten about us, everything will be in vain." Emperor Velgath frowned when he heard this and asked in a low voice. "This shouldn't be the case, right? We still have the altar that can ignore the interference of the chaotic zone, so it shouldn't be difficult to contact them." Votharian remained silent upon hearing Velgath, and a look of hesitation crossed his face. Seeing the hesitation, Velgath's heart sank, and a sense of foreboding washed over him. Seeing Velgath's ugly expression, Votharian sighed, looked at the stone monument and spoke in a low voice. "You know that once the lifespan of any member of our royal family comes to an end, they seal their soul in the soul monument, right?" Emperor Velgath nodded his head upon hearing this as he was already aware of this. Seeing Velgath nod, Votharian continued, "Although it's true that we can seal our souls in the soul memento and live even after our lifespan runs out, this memento isn't as miraculous as it seems." He said and paused briefly. "When I sealed my soul in the memento, I found that it can only sustain one soul at a time. You understand what that means, don't you?" Emperor Velgath's pupils shrank when he heard Votharian's words, and a shocked look appeared on his face. "Since it can sustain only one soul at a time and you are here, does that mean grandfather and the others?" Emperor Velgath didn't finish his sentence, but Votharian knew what he wanted to ask, so he nodded. "Yes, when I sealed my soul in it, only your grandfather's soul was inside, and it disappeared the moment I was sealed." Emperor Velgath sucked in a cold breath when he heard this, but Votharian wasn't finished. "When father's soul disappeared, I had inherited all of his memories, including those of our predecessors who sealed themselves in the soul memento before me. In one of those memories, I saw that thousands of years ago, your great-grandfather tried to contact them during a crisis caused by the Eldritch horrors, but no one from their side responded." Emperor Velgath's mind went blank for a moment when he heard this, and he began breathing heavily. If they don't even respond to us, then why were we exiled to the chaotic zone in the first place?" he asked through gritted teeth. Votharian gave a self-mocking smile when he heard Velgath and spoke in a bitter tone. "In the eyes of those people, we are just pawns to be discarded at any time. Do you think they care about what happens to us?" Crack! Emperor Velgath clenched his fists so hard they made a cracking sound, and a look of hatred flashed in his eyes. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath. After a moment, when he opened his eyes, his expression was completely indifferent, and he nodded at Votharion. I know what I have to do now, he said and turned to leave. When Votharion saw Velgath's expression, a faint smile appeared on his face, and he muttered in a low voice, "At least you are not as foolish as I was, wasting my entire life doing nothing." Emperor Velgath paused when he heard Votharion but soon continued walking, leaving the room. As Emperor Velgath left, the soul memento flashed, and Votharion's illusionary body sank back inside it. Outside the hidden room, Emperor Velgath stood with an indifferent look on his face, his eyes flashing with conflicting emotions. After standing there for more than a minute, he took a deep breath and walked away. As he moved, he glanced at the world passage, which was glowing on the altar but didn't stop and soon disappeared. In another room, where the second altar was located, Velgath reappeared and looked at it with an indifferent look on his face. Without a word, he poured his world essence into the altar, and it began to glow madly. Chapter 1139. There is something wrong with this planet. Run, bitch, run. Run for your life, ha 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 ha. You lunatic, save me already, or I am going to die here. Valerie screamed in fright as she ran while being chased by a 4-meter-tall wolf. The wolf was covered in light blue fur and had the aura of a beginner-level rank 3 core monster around it. The wolf was covered in light blue fur and had the aura of a beginner-level rank 3 core monster around it. A golden light covered the running wolf, slowing its speed to the point where Valerie, who was an S+ rank hunter, could barely outrun it. Elysia leisurely flew high in the sky while following Valerie and the wolf with a joyful look on her face. After making Valerie run all over the planet while being chased by a powerful beginner-level rank 3 monster, she finally overcame the fear that had taken deep root in her heart after being defeated by Valerie again and again in the video games. At the same time, because she was now a rank 4 core evolver and had recovered her memories related to Illustria, her personality had started to change. In polite terms, she now had a few screws loose in her head. In serious terms, she had become a psychopath. What are you screaming about, bitch? Weren't you acting all haughty a few days ago? Queen and peasants, huh? Now run until your legs give out. Elysia laughed like a maniac as she flew above Valerie. You are the bitch? Your whole family is full of bitches, you lunatic. Now save me. Valerie cursed as if there were no tomorrow and jumped up, trying to grab Elysia's leg as she flew above her. Elysia smiled when she saw Valerie jump and immediately disappeared from sight. Your mother. Valerie cursed again when Elysia disappeared, and continued her desperate run for survival. Fuck, where is that bastard? Why did he leave me with this lunatic? She shouted in a crying voice, glancing back as she ran, only to see the furious face of the wolf with its mouth full of saliva. Zorda stood far away from the scene, watching everything unfold while shivering from time to time. At this moment, only one thought filled his mind: women are scary. First, it had been Valerie who left a dark shadow in his heart by defeating him again and again in games. Now, looking at Elysia, he realized she was even more dangerous than Valerie. It's good that I am already dead and don't have to worry about getting married. Otherwise, he muttered to himself, shuddering like a frightened rabbit. At the same time, he felt extremely grateful to Evan for killing him and saving him from the worldly trap of women. Just thinking about the scenario where he hadn't died at Evan's hands and somehow ended up getting married made his black face turn pale white. While Zorda was lost in his thoughts, a powerful aura erupted from the wolf that was chasing Valerie, causing his expression to change. Not good. Zorda was about to take action when he felt the powerful aura, but before he could, whoosh, a golden spear made of pure light energy shot down from the sky like divine punishment, appearing directly above the wolf's head in an instant. Howl. Sensing the threat of death, the wolf howled in anger and conjured a thick ice wall in front of itself. But, boom, the spear of light obliterated the ice wall instantly, and before the wolf could do anything else, blood spurted from its skull as the sharp tip of the spear pierced through its head, destroying its brain in an instant. Valerie was blown away by the powerful aura that had erupted from the wolf moments earlier, crashing into an ice mountain wall and sliding down with a bloody nose. Elysia instantly appeared above the dying wolf and narrowed her eyes. Zorda also appeared near Elysia, his expression equally serious. That was the aura of a beginner level rank 4, right? He asked Elysia in a serious voice. Elysia nodded and said with a frown, someone was trying to send their projection here to see what was happening. It seems they have already realized something is wrong after one failure after another. He didn't notice this, right? Don't worry. Elysia shook her head at Zorda's concern. I killed him before that guy could successfully send his projection here. Elysia walked toward Valerie, who had stars floating above her head, and with a wave of her hand, a golden light covered her, healing all her injuries instantly. After regaining her senses, Valerie glared at Elysia with resentment, but Elysia didn't care, and before Valerie could say anything, she enveloped her in golden light and transported her back to Base City 5, where they had been staying. After returning to the city, Elysia looked up at the sky, her brow deeply furrowed. There's something wrong with this planet. Zorda appeared beside Elysia and spoke in a low voice. Elysia remained silent at his words, having already sensed the issue long ago. From the memories I have recovered, even for powerful beings like Illustraea, it's incredibly difficult to break through world barriers and descend to lower-level worlds. But for some reason, Winterclaw can easily send rank 3 core evolvers here, which is very strange. Elysia thought to herself, recalling the aura of the rank 4 core evolver she had sensed from the wolf earlier. Typically, a phantom of that level should have been destroyed by the world's rules due to its high power. But if I hadn't killed that wolf, I'm certain the projection would have easily manifested. The number of people coming out of the portals is increasing by the day. If this continues, it won't be long before rank 4 core evolvers start arriving. Zorda sighed as he used his spiritual senses to observe the portals linked to Utopia. Elysia's frown deepened at Zorda's words. While she didn't fear those emerging from the portals, she was concerned about the eventual damage high-level core evolvers could bring to Earth. If things get worse, I might have to use that thing. Elysia thought to herself and closed her eyes. As she closed her eyes, a golden light flashed in her vision, and the image of a colossal tree reaching the sky appeared before her. Chapter 1140 Nothingness and Voidborn Invocation, Part 1. Evan looked at the notifications flashing before his eyes, his lips curling upward. Your primordial monarch core has broken through to rank 3. You have received the passive authority, Void Manipulation. You have received the Void skill, Null Eyes. You have received the Void skill, Event Horizon. Your Doombringer bloodline is fully awakening. All conditions are not fulfilled. Bloodline awakening failed. Your ruler's authority is reacting to the conceptual energy of void. The conceptual energy of void can be evolved into the conceptual energy of nothingness. Conditions are not fulfilled. Fully unlock your ruler's authority to evolve the conceptual energy of void into the conceptual energy of nothingness. Due to the influence of your ruler's authority, you have received the unique void skill, Voidborn Invocation. Evan stared at the notifications with a startled expression, especially at the ones regarding his bloodline and the ruler's authority. I awakened part of my bloodline when I was in a rank hunter in Aurora World, but even after becoming a rank 3 core evolver, I still can't fully awaken it. He muttered with a frown on his face as he looked at the message indicating the conditions to awaken his bloodline were unfulfilled. At least tell me what the conditions are so I can try to meet them, he said with a shake of his head before turning his attention to the next notification. Conceptual energy of nothingness, Evan muttered, his eyes gleaming with excitement. There are many types of conceptual energies in the world. For example, most people comprehend the conceptual energy of basic elements like fire, wind, water, earth, etc. These are the most basic forms of conceptual energy, but when compared to higher-level elements like space, time, and void, their power is much weaker. Of course, even though their power may be slightly weaker than the high-level conceptual energies, it doesn't mean they can't stand on equal footing with them. If someone comprehends these elements to their extreme, they can evolve into ultimate elements. For instance, the conceptual energy of fire can evolve into the ultimate fire that can even burn space and time itself. Similarly, void energy can evolve into the conceptual energy of nothingness, but the process is extremely difficult. Void is already high-level energy, and the conceptual energy of nothingness is nearly on par with, or even greater than, the conceptual energies of death, life, and soul, which form the basis of shadow energy. So, seeing that he could evolve his void energy into the conceptual energy of nothingness by unlocking his ruler's authority was a huge surprise for Evan. Just what is this ruler's authority? He muttered while rubbing his chin in thought. For now, other than knowing that his ruler's authority doubles his endurance, he knew little to nothing about it. He even asked Anastasia about it when he was in the closed world of Drades, but she also didn't know anything about it. Well, at least I know I need to unlock my ruler's authority to evolve my conceptual energy of void. Unlike my bloodline, where I have no clue how to start with, he sighed and shifted his focus to the remaining notifications. His passive authority, Void Manipulation, was relatively simple. This authority greatly increases his affinity with the void element, allowing him to manipulate it more easily. The power of this authority would grow along with his understanding of void energy, and once he created his Lost Seal and broke through to rank 4, it would evolve into void law manipulation, granting him control over the law of void itself. The Null Eyes skill was also incredibly powerful, and it had emerged due to the Void Eyes skill he had previously comprehended. Null Eyes had 3 powerful effects, all of which could catch enemies off guard. Null Eyes. 1. First effect, Gaze of the Forgotten. By locking eyes with a target and using void energy, the user can erase their existence from the target's memory, making it as if they never existed in the target's mind. Under the effect of Null Eyes, the target completely forgets the caster's presence and any interaction with them. 2. Second effect, Void Gaze. Upon activation, the caster's pupils expand into bottomless black voids. Gazing into these eyes drains the energy, willpower, and physical strength of those nearby, siphoning their essence into the caster. Any being who makes eye contact with the caster finds their life force and magical power rapidly sapped, weakening them while strengthening the caster. 3. Third effect, Oblivion Eyes. Upon activation, the user's pupils become singularities resembling void-like black holes. When the caster focuses their gaze on an object or person, a piece of that target is erased from existence, starting with memories and eventually erasing their physical form. The void energy gradually obliterates the target's identity, memories, and eventually their body. Initially, they forget small things, but prolonged exposure to the Oblivion Eyes results in total erasure. Note: Gaze of Forgotten and Oblivion Eyes work based on the concept of nothingness. Using it without proper understanding of the conceptual energy of nothingness may harm the caster. Evan had already received some information about Null Eyes when he reached rank 3, but now, seeing the full details, he couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air, especially after seeing the third effect, Oblivion Eyes. Damn, these Null Eyes are completely broken, he said to himself, feeling his blood boil with excitement. But he quickly calmed down as he noticed the note at the end, and his expression became serious. I can't use this skill carelessly, especially Oblivion Eyes. Who knows what kind of side effects I will suffer if I use it recklessly, he said, before turning to the details of the next skill. Event Horizon. Creates an area of pure void energy in which time and space distort. Inside, light bends, the sound disappears, and gravity warps, making movement and thought sluggish. Enemies caught within are drained of their life force and energy, which are slowly absorbed by the caster. 1141 Nothingness and Voidborn Invocation, Part 2. Event Horizon. Creates an area of pure void energy in which time and space distort. Inside, light bends, sound disappears, and gravity warps, making movement and thought sluggish. Enemies caught within are drained of their life force and energy, which are slowly absorbed by the caster. Evan raised an eyebrow after reading the details of the Event Horizon skill, and a thought suddenly flashed through his mind. If I use this skill along with my Void Zone, wouldn't it become a killer move? He muttered in a low voice, envisioning a scenario where his enemies would be trapped inside an area filled with void energy, their energy being absorbed by him. Not only that, now that I have some understanding of the conceptual energy of death, I can even try to merge my Death Ring skill with Event Horizon. If I successfully merge Death Ring with Event Horizon, create a new skill, and use it in combination with my zone. Evan's mind raced, and the more he thought about it, the more excited he became. He tried to overcome his excitement and took a few deep breaths to calm down. Although I really want to see if I can merge these skills into one, I still need to finish everything here before doing that, he said, and looked at the last skill that he received because of the influence of his ruler's authority. Voidborn Invocation. Upon usage, summons an entity from the deepest and the forgotten part of the void, a being of nothingness that devours all life and energies around it. The creature is unstable and exists temporarily, feeding on everything in its path. It obeys the caster, but its presence harms reality. The level of the summoned creature depends on the caster's level. This skill can be used once every month. Evan's face changed when he read the details of Voidborn Invocation. Just from the description, he could tell it was an extremely powerful skill. But there were aspects of the skill that made him uneasy, especially the fact that using it could summon a creature of nothingness that devours all life and might even harm reality. The deepest and forgotten part of the void. Evan narrowed his eyes as he examined the details, feeling that this skill was not as simple as it seemed, and he had a strange feeling about it. I received this skill because of my ruler's authority. Could it be that my ruler's authority has something to do with this so-called forgotten part of the void? He muttered under his breath, but couldn't reach a conclusion. He didn't even know the name of his ruler's authority, so it was difficult for him to form any solid theories about it. There are just question marks for the name of my ruler's authority. If I ever find the person responsible for this cult, I swear I'll blow him up with the halberd of destruction. Evan took a few deep breaths to calm himself, and after looking over the Voidborn invocation skill again, his expression turned serious. If it's not a life and death situation, I really can't use this skill, he said to himself as he stood up. Name: Evan, Azeroth. Race: Eltharin. Current synchronization rate between your race Eltharin and the origin universe, 65%. Rank: Beginner level rank 3. Bloodline: Doombringer, partially awakened, 2nd stage. Strength: 1953. Right pointing arrow 3855. Agility: 1933. Right pointing arrow 3900. Endurance: 2050. Right pointing arrow 4125. Plus 4125. Effect of Ruler's Authority. World Essence: 2154. Right pointing arrow 4500. Stamina: 2061. Right pointing arrow 4060. Intelligence: 1920. Right pointing arrow 3830. Plus 383. Effect of False Progenitor Title. Primordial Shadow Energy: 3500. Right pointing arrow 6000. Current understanding of the conceptual energy of void, 75%. Bound Flame: Prismatic Fire. Soul Weapon: Halberd of Destruction. Skills: Shadow Walk, Shadow Storage, Dimensional Shadow Bullet, Ice Chains, Wind Manipulation, Mind Suppression, Shadow Shrouding Wings, Temporal Velocity, Energy Devouring, Thunder Tempest, Flicker Step, Ember Vitality, Regeneration, Mid-Level Poison Resistance, Death Ring, Ice Spear, Wind Walk, Summon Lich, Soul Beacon, Soul Severance, Fireball, Blinding Light, Lightning Arrow. Gaze of Monarch, Psychic Soul Realm, Shadow Mark, Abyssal Vortex, Skyfall, Shadow Puppeteer, Miasma Conversion, Event Horizon, New, Voidborn Invocation, New. Pupil Skills: Eyes of the Abyss, Null Eyes. Physique: Shadow Monarch Physique. Titles: Rulebreaker, Creator of the Primordial Shadow Realm, the Cursed One, Owner of Eldoria City, False Progenitor. Class: Shadow Necromancer. Class Skills: Shadow Resurrection, Shadow Save, Shadow Senses, Shadow Possession, Shadow Nails, Death Transfer, Growth Link, Soul Absorption, Soul Fusion, Shadow Clone, Shadow World, Shadow Forge. 1214. Racial Skill: Reaper's Wrath. Authorities: Master of Shadows, Death Guardian, Realm Guardian, Void Manipulation. Ruler's Authority == Evan looked at his status window, and seeing the increase in his stat points, a satisfied smile appeared on his lips. As expected from the Primordial Monarch core, normally, the average stat points of a beginner-level rank 3 core evolver are between 2000 and 2500 points, but mine are almost double. He said with satisfaction and noticed that the synchronization rate between his race Eltharin and the origin universe increased by a full 3%, reaching the 65% mark. He checked his shadow save skill and found the number of shadow undeads he could now save reached 50,000. The only thing that disappointed him was that there was no change in Growth Link skill. Maybe the Growth Link skill reached its limit, and I need to evolve the Rune of Evolution into an origin rune. He muttered and closed the status window. After closing the status window, he glanced at a broken tree not far from him and used his authority, Void Manipulation. As he used the authority, his eyes gleamed with deep purple energy, and the next second, bang! The space around the broken tree shattered like glass, slicing the tree into thousands of pieces, and the fragments of the tree were quickly swallowed by a void rift. Damn, using this move, I am afraid I can tear even a rank 3 core evolvers to pieces if they don't react in time. Evan muttered in amazement, then slashed with his finger. As he did, a sharp blade of void energy tore through the space, instantly striking a rock. The part of the rock that came into contact with the void blade vanished instantly, as though it had been devoured by an unseen beast. Evan was very pleased with the results of his casual test and finally decided it was time to get to work. He gazed into the distance and called out in a calm voice. Morurok, 1142 World Passage. A puff of black smoke appeared some distance away from Evan and transformed into the figure of Morurok. The Eldritch creature bowed his head as he materialized before Evan, cold sweat breaking out on his back. When he had faced the shadow clone earlier, he hadn't felt any pressure, but now, standing before the real Evan, he felt as if the person in front of him could kill him with just a single attack. I thought you would take advantage of the situation and run away along with the other Eldritch creatures, but it seems you know what's good for you, Evan remarked lightly as he pulled out a chair from his shadow storage and sat down on it. Morurok smiled bitterly upon hearing Evan's words but said nothing. If Evan hadn't forced him to reveal his true face in front of Eldrich and Cthoron, he would have definitely run earlier. But now that Eldrich and Cthoron were aware of his true identity, there was no way he could return to the Eldrich Empire even if he wanted to. Evan did not want to embarrass Morurok, who had helped his shadow undeads earlier in killing several rank 3 Eldritch creatures, so he directly asked about the matter that had been bothering him. Do you know what happened to Emperor Velgath and why he suddenly retreated? Morurok shook his head upon hearing Evan's question and responded with uncertainty in his voice. I am not entirely sure, but it might be because of the world passage. Evan's eyes narrowed when he heard the words, world passage, and he asked in a deep voice. Tell me more about this world passage. I don't know much about it since it was a secret project, Morurok replied. I only heard bits and pieces from my father. From what little he mentioned, Emperor Velgath is trying to open a world passage to a different world, hoping to escape from Azregoth world. But opening a world passage from Azregoth to another world is incredibly difficult due to the interference of the chaotic zone. That's why Emperor Velgath hasn't left his castle in decades, as he has been trying to stabilize the world passage. Since he suddenly retreated from here, even though he could have stopped you, I suspect something has gone wrong with the world passage. A passage to escape from this world? Evan frowned when he heard Morurok's words. Why does he want to escape from this world? Although Evan had only been in this world for a few days, he could tell that the environment here was far better than Utopia, mainly due to Origin Universe, which was very close to this place. Here, anyone could perceive many different concepts that would help individuals increase their understanding of conceptual energy much faster. So, he couldn't understand why Emperor Velgath would want to leave such a world. Maybe it's because of the Eldritch horrors. Morurok said hesitantly, uncertain of Emperor Velgath's true thoughts. Is the situation with the Eldritch horrors really so bad that they feel the need to flee this world? Evan muttered quietly to himself, though he sensed something was off. Based on what Morurok had told him, the Eldritch horrors controlled around 30% of Azregoth world, while the rest of the world was under the control of the Eldrich Empire. Emperor Velgath had used his control over the world to push all the Eldritch energy into the regions held by the Eldritch horrors. Once these Eldritch horrors left the Eldritch energy-rich areas, their power diminished slightly, making it difficult for them to reach their full potential. This is why the Eldritch horrors rarely attack the regions under the control of the Eldrich Empire, as they don't like to enter places devoid of Eldritch energy. Considering all of this, while the Eldritch horrors were undoubtedly a threat to the Eldrich Empire, it didn't seem severe enough to force them to flee the world entirely. There has to be something else I don't know about, Evan thought to himself, and for some reason, felt uneasy. After seeing Emperor Velgath's phantom earlier, he was certain that Velgath was a rank 5 core evolver. For something to force a rank 5 core evolver to abandon a world he controlled was no simple matter. I thought that once I reached rank 3, completing the tasks would be easier, but it seems things are far more complicated than they appear. Evan sighed as he looked back at Morurok. By the way, they call me an invader from the Lost World. What exactly is this so-called Lost World? Have you heard of the war between the primordials that shattered the Origin universe? Morurok asked after hearing Evan's question. I have heard a few things. Evan nodded in response, recalling what Eldrich had told him earlier. When the Origin universe shattered, some of its fragments were swallowed by the void and vanished. Most of those fragments were destroyed, but some survived. The surviving parts of the Origin universe became known as the Lost Worlds, Morurok explained. I see. Evan wasn't particularly surprised by the explanation because when Eldrich had told him about the shattering of the Origin universe, he had already guessed this much. What about the Universal Tree? Do you know what happened to it after it was destroyed? Morurok was visibly confused when he heard Evan's question, unable to understand why he was interested in the Universal Tree. Nonetheless, he shared what little he knew. As far as I know, the Universal Tree was completely destroyed in that war and disappeared afterwards. Destroyed, huh? It seems these people are unaware of the World Tree and the Tree of Life. While I am not entirely certain, I have a strong suspicion that both of those are somehow related to the Universal Tree. Evan thought to himself, and after a moment of silence, asked the last question, the one that mattered to him the most. What is the power level of people in the Origin universe? Are there people beyond rank 6, or is rank 6 the highest? Chapter 1143. What is that thing? Part 1. What is the power level of people in the Origin universe? Are there people beyond rank 6, or is rank 6 the highest? Morurok wanted to roll his eyes when he heard Evan's question. Damn, I am just a small fry at mid-level rank 3. How am I supposed to know about the power level in the Origin universe? He cursed inwardly but still shared what little he had read or heard. As far as I know, rank 6 core evolvers are considered the top powerhouses in the Origin universe. Only the primordials and a few people under them might be stronger than rank 6, but I don't know their specific level, Morurok said and added after a moment. Other than the primordials, those who have been given the title of progenitor by the Origin universe are also incredibly powerful and maybe just slightly weaker than the primordials. Although Evan wasn't entirely sure that Morurok's information was accurate, he couldn't help but sigh in relief when he heard that similar to Utopia, rank 6 core evolvers were the top powerhouses in the Origin universe. Because of Azeroth, he was certain that once he enters the Origin universe, many people would be coming for his head. But knowing he can reach rank 6 in Utopia, and that only the primordials and a select few are stronger than rank 6 core evolvers, it gave him hope that survival won't be impossible once he goes there. The second half of Morurok's sentence also surprised him. The title of progenitor, he muttered, recalling Anastasia's absurd power level, which could easily crush other rank 6 core evolvers as though they were children in front of her. People with the title of progenitor really are abnormal, Evan thought, and his gaze fell on his own title, false progenitor. His core was the primordial monarch core, and he was confident that with enough time, he would reach the level of a primordial with its help. But Morurok had just mentioned that the people with the title of progenitor were almost equal to the primordials themselves. He had the primordial monarch core, and in the future, there was a very high chance that his false progenitor title would evolve into something similar to Anastasia's title. Damn, wouldn't I be able to swat away primordials like flies if I fully developed my title and core to their true potential? Evan thought with a surge of excitement, but he quickly calmed himself. There is no need to think about killing primordials like flies just yet. For now, I am just a rank 3 noob who can't even withstand a single attack from a rank 6 core evolver. Evan glanced at Morurok and noticed the Eldritch creature was staring at him with a strange expression, clearly not understanding why he seemed so excited after learning about the power levels of the Origin universe and the progenitors. Evan didn't care about the look on Morurok's face and took a step forward. Wait for me here, he said as the space around him warped and twisted, and in the blink of an eye, he disappeared. Using his understanding of void energy, Evan appeared inside the void space and looked around with satisfaction. Previously, he needed to break the space barrier using void energy to enter the void space, but now, he can step into it directly without much difficulty. It's time to wrap things up here and return to Utopia. I don't know why, but ever since that emperor fled, I have had this uneasy feeling like something bad is about to happen. Evan muttered to himself, and with a thought, thousands of bodies belonging to the Eldritch creatures, those slain by his shadow undeads and skeletons, came out of his shadow storage. Now that Evan had become a rank 3 core evolver, he could save up to 50,000 shadow undeads. Currently, his army numbered around 15,000, meaning he could still create about 35,000 more. However, to create shadow undeads, he required a large amount of shadow energy. Though his current reserve of shadow energy stood at 6,000 points, he couldn't afford to use all of it. If he depleted his energy completely, it would be troublesome if he encountered any danger, as he wouldn't be able to use Halberd of Destruction and some of his other skills without it. Let's increase the number of shadow undeads to 20,000 for now, Evan muttered after contemplating for a moment, and the primordial shadow energy within his core began to churn. In an instant, the shadow energy in his core depleted rapidly, but as a result, 5,000 new shadow undeads materialized in front of him. The ranks of most of the shadow undeads he had created ranged from beginner level rank 1 to the peak of rank 2, with only a few reaching rank 3. Evan didn't concern himself too much with their individual levels, as his current priority was to increase the sheer number of his shadow undeads, because the greater their numbers, the stronger the life chain skill of Miss Spider would become. The recovery speed of primordial shadow energy has greatly improved now that I am a rank 3 core evolver. Evan looked at his core and was surprised by the recovery speed of his shadow energy. Although he just used more than 50% of his energy, he estimated that it would take only around 4 or 5 hours to recover the energy he had just spent. After checking the recovery speed of his energy, he called back all the newly created shadow undeads into his shadow storage, took a step forward and vanished from the void space. A few minutes after Evan disappeared, a powerful aura filled with madness engulfed the area where Evan had been moments before, and a giant starfish with hundreds of writhing tentacles, exuding the aura of a mid-level rank 4 monster, appeared there. The rank 4 monster circled the area where Evan had vanished, and after investigating for a while it moved away. Soon after the rank 4 monster departed, a large swarm of similar-looking creatures arrived and followed after it. Chapter 1144 What is that thing? Part 2. Let's go, Evan said to Morurok as he emerged from the void space. Morurok followed behind Evan and asked cautiously, "Where are we going?" Evan glanced at the timid Eldritch creature from the corner of his eye and replied in a calm voice, "Eldronthia Empire." Morurok's face stiffened upon hearing Evan's words, and he stared at him with his eyes wide open. I know you are strong, but don't you think it's very dangerous for us to go there directly? Not to mention Emperor Velgath, who is a rank 5 core evolver. There are many other people in Eldronthia Empire who are not weaker than my father." Evan didn't stop when he heard Morurok's concerns. He moved ahead and appeared in front of the 4 airships that Cthoron and the others had brought with them. Since Cthoron and Cthoron had been taken back by Velgath, and the other Eldritch creatures either died or fled, the 4 airships were still in perfect condition. Without saying anything, Evan stored all 4 airships inside his shadow storage before finally turning to face Morurok. "You don't have to worry about Velgath or the others. I will handle them myself. You just need to follow me quietly and handle some minor tasks. Do you understand?" Morurok nearly choked when he heard Evan's words, especially when he casually stated that he would deal with Emperor Velgath and the others. He wanted to curse Evan for being ignorant, but remembering that he couldn't beat him, he stayed silent and nodded his head. Damn, I shouldn't have sided with this lunatic. He wants to fight a rank 5 core evolver right after breaking through to rank 3, Morurok thought to himself, feeling depressed as he followed behind Evan. Although Asregoth world wasn't as large as Utopia, it was still much bigger than Aurora and other lower-level worlds. According to Morurok, if they moved at full speed without rest, it would take them around 4 days to reach the Eldronthia Empire. Evan was stunned when he heard that it would take them 4 days to reach the Eldronthia Empire and felt Morurok was deceiving him, especially since he knew that when he first arrived in Asregoth world, Zaltor had found him in just a few hours. Additionally, the army led by Cthoron and Cthoron didn't take 4 days to reach him after he had killed Zaltor. When Evan stated his doubts, Morurok sighed helplessly and explained that the reason Cthoron and others were able to reach his location in just a few hours was because of the teleportation formations built across the world to facilitate faster movement. These formations were very special and could only be used by high-ranking members of the Eldronthia Empire, like Cthoron, Cthoron and the others. Because of these formations, it was easy for them to reach Evan's location. Morurok knew where these formations were located, but using them required a special mark, which he didn't possess. Without that mark, it was impossible for him to utilize the formations to travel to the Eldronthia Empire. Teleportation formations, Evan muttered thoughtfully, recalling the formations Ashley had built all over Utopia. After hearing Morurok's explanation, he began to suspect that these formations were quite similar to the ones created by Ashley. Does that mean there is an Eldritch creature who's proficient in creating space formations? Evan thought to himself and felt it seemed possible, especially since he had just seen Cthoron, a rune master who even knew about primordial runes. By the way, Morurok suddenly remembered something and said cautiously as he flew beside Evan. "I don't know if you are aware of this, but Emperor Velgath can monitor most of Asregoth world. Now that we are heading toward the Eldronthia Empire, I am afraid he might have already detected us." "Don't worry," Evan responded nonchalantly when he heard Morurok's concern. "I already know about that problem, and I have solved it." "Solved it?" Morurok asked with a look of confusion on his face, not understanding what Evan meant. "Use your spiritual senses to scan the space around us." Evan glanced at the mid-level rank 3 Eldritch creature beside him and said with a shake of his head. Upon hearing Evan, Morurok did as he was told, and when he used his spiritual senses, he detected a strange barrier surrounding them. This barrier. Morurok frowned when he sensed the barrier and felt it was oddly familiar. "Oh right, this barrier feels similar to that black-purple bubble that enveloped the forest," Morurok thought, recalling the void territory. Although he was curious about the barrier and its functions, Morurok decided not to ask anything else and followed Evan in silence. If Evan wanted, he could use his void energy to travel much faster and reach the Eldronthia Empire in less than 2 days. However, he chose not to rush as he still needed time to adapt to his new powers before confronting the people of the Eldronthia Empire. As they moved, Evan constantly thought of different ways to utilize his void manipulation authority, which granted him an extremely high level of control over the void element. Just like this, 2 days passed in the blink of an eye. Morurok looked at Evan, who was walking high in the sky with a numb expression on his face. As Evan walked, his figure seemed a bit illusory, as if he were both there and not there at the same time. What kind of monster is this guy? Morurok thought to himself, a wave of disbelief washing over him. He broke through to rank 3 just 2 days ago, yet his control over his conceptual energy is even stronger than mine. He sighed inwardly, feeling somewhat depressed. Just as Morurok was lost in his thoughts, Evan suddenly stopped and stared into the distance with narrowed eyes. What's wrong? Morurok, who had been following closely behind, asked in confusion upon seeing Evan stop. Evan didn't answer his question and continued to stare ahead. Morurok looked in the same direction with a puzzled look but saw nothing. Is there Anyo? Morurok began to ask, but before he could finish, a powerful aura suddenly engulfed them, causing the entire Azregoth world to tremble violently. Under immense pressure, Morurok could no longer remain in the sky and was forcibly smashed toward the ground. With a loud crash, he hit the earth, a trickle of blood running from the corner of his mouth. Wah, what is that thing? The mid-level rank 3 Eldritch creature raised his head with difficulty, and when he looked into the distance, he saw that the entire sky had turned pitch black, and an eerie aura had begun engulfing the whole of Azregoth world. Chapter 1145. A rank 6 core evolver? Evan stared into the distance, where the sky had suddenly turned pitch black and a strong sense of impending crisis overwhelmed him. The dark, oppressive aura which made the entire Azregoth world tremble was spreading rapidly in all directions, and even though he was millions of kilometers away from the focal point of the disturbance, he still found it difficult to maintain the flow of world essence within his body. A rank 6 core evolver. No, I have felt Sylvan and Alaric's auras many times, and this one is definitely weaker than theirs. It must be the aura of a rank 5 individual, but there is something strange about this aura. Like it can somehow cover the entire world, Evan muttered with a frown on his face as he struggled to comprehend what was happening. He glanced over at Morurok, who was pressed to the ground under the pressure, and his mouth couldn't help but twitch in exasperation. What kind of fake mid-level rank 3 core evolver is this guy? Should I just turn him into a shadow undead and be done with him? Evan thought, narrowing his eyes in irritation. Morurok, who was pressed to the ground, suddenly felt a chill run down his spine, and upon sensing the unspoken threat, he quickly forced himself to his feet, looking around with a vigilant expression. Do you know what's going on? Evan's voice rang inside his ears the moment he stood up. Noticing Evan's narrowed eyes fixed on him, Morurok realized Evan was seriously considering getting rid of him. In a panic, he quickly answered, I am not sure, but it's most likely related to the Eldritch horrors. That dark aura feels very similar to theirs. Eldritch horrors. Evan's eyes widened in surprise when he heard Morurok's words, and he recalled why Morurok had sided with him in the first place. A major riot caused by Eldritch horrors that will affect the entire Eldronthia Empire. He thought, momentarily shifting his attention away from Morurok. If he is right, and this really is caused by Eldritch horrors, then this could be the perfect opportunity for me to take advantage of the situation and complete my objectives. Evan muttered quietly, his eyes gleaming with a strange light. Just as he was contemplating how best to exploit the chaos caused by the Eldritch horrors, he sensed something and turned to look behind him. As his gaze shifted, his eyes flashed with void energy and his vision pierced through the endless void, settling on a point 50,000 kilometers away. The moment he saw what lay in the distance, his eyes widened in shock. Holy sh*t. He cursed loudly. How many Eldritch horrors are in that swarm? He muttered, his voice heavy with unease as he watched the massive horde of Eldritch horrors advancing in his direction. The creature leading the swarm was a mid-level rank 4 Eldritch horror, and behind it, nearly 100,000 horrors followed. Without waiting for the swarm to get closer, Evan used his wind manipulation skill to lift Morurok off the ground and ran sideways, intending to avoid the horde. Although he wasn't afraid of the swarm and was confident he could defeat them, he had no desire to waste his energy in a pointless battle, especially after using his Shadow Resurrection skill just 2 hours ago to create new Shadow Undeads. Over the past 2 days, as he journeyed toward the Eldronthia Empire, Evan had used his Shadow Resurrection skill repeatedly, increasing the number of his Shadow Undeads to 45,000. He only needed to use the skill one more time to reach the limit of his current Shadow save, so rather than squandering his energy on a fight with the Eldritch horrors, he preferred to conserve it for creating more Shadow Undeads. After about 10 minutes of running, Evan glanced back at the swarm, only to notice that the rank 4 creature leading the horde had changed its direction and was still heading toward him. This bastard! Evan cursed when he saw this and felt something was off. Without slowing down, he changed his direction once again, but after only a few more minutes of running, he came to a halt and stared back at the swarm with a deadpan expression. That damn thing is following me. he muttered in a cold voice and his eyes flashed with killing intent. He thought for a while and after a moment of silence, he took a deep breath. Since this is Asterisk Hole wants to die, I will fulfillish, he said and without waiting for the swarm of Eldritch horrors to reach him, he took a step forward and shot toward them at lightning speed. As he moved, he glanced inside his shadow storage and his eyes fell on Gobu. Now that I have broken through to rank 3, the power of my bloodline that I used when I activated Life Steal in the Forbidden Lands of Utopia has fully recovered. Since I can use Life Steal again and I will soon face Velgath and other powerful people, I might as well use this mid-level rank 4 Eldritch horror to push Gobu to mid-level rank 4. Evan thought to himself and stopped looking at Gobu. In just a few moments, the swarm of Eldritch horrors came into his sight. Morurok was confused because of Evan's seemingly random movements, but he soon noticed the swarm of Eldritch horrors. Seeing the swarm of Eldritch horrors that had covered the entire horizon, turning the sky black as if hundreds of thousands of insects were descending upon them, a chill ran down his spine. Fu *K. Why are there so many Eldritch horrors here? Morurok screamed in fright upon noticing the large swarm of Eldritch horrors and urged Evan to flee. Evan's face darkened upon hearing Morurok's bickering and he glared at him with cold eyes. Stop screaming like a bitch or I'll throw you into the middle of that swarm. Morurok's face went pale at Evan's icy words and he immediately clamped his mouth shut. Soon the swarm of Eldritch horrors was only 3,000 meters away from him. Seeing them so close, Evan's eyes flashed with cold intent and the next second. Event horizon. Everything was instantly engulfed in a deep purple chaotic void energy. 1146 against the mid-level rank 4, Part 1. As Evan activated his newly gained skill, Event Horizon, a powerful burst of chaotic void energy engulfed the surrounding area. All the Eldritch horrors, including the mid-level rank 4-1, were caught inside the chaotic void energy, making them feel uneasy as they looked at their surroundings, which now turned dark purple due to the sheer amount of void energy. Event Horizon creates an area of pure void energy in which time and space distort. Inside, light bends, the sound disappears, and gravity warps, making movement and thought sluggish. Enemies caught within are drained of their life force and energy, which are slowly absorbed by the caster. The mid-level rank 4 Eldritch horror, which had the body of a grotesque creature like a starfish and hundreds of writhing tentacles, roared when the surroundings around it turned dark purple, but no sound came from its mouth due to the effect of the event horizon. While the Eldritch horrors were confused, the pure void energy that engulfed the area began to seep into their bodies, slowly draining away their life force and energy. In the middle of the field created by the Event Horizon skill, Evan felt a surge of life force and world essence flood into his body, making him feel fully energized. Although Evan was surprised by the amount of world essence and life force he was receiving due to the effect of Event Horizon, he knew it wasn't the time to study it, as there was a powerful rank 4 Eldritch horror in front of him, and it wouldn't be easy to kill. And just as Evan thought, less than 3 seconds after being caught inside the area of pure void energy, the rank 4 Eldritch horror realized it was rapidly losing its life force and world essence. The tens of red-colored eyes on its starfish-like body lit up and in the next second, roar, a powerful roar filled with Eldritch energy erupted from its mouth, blowing away the pure void energy in a 100-meter radius. At the same time, its many red eyes glowed brightly, and powerful energy beams shot toward Evan like searing lances of light. The energy beams cut through the pure void energy field Evan had created like a hot knife through butter, and instantly reached him. Morurok, who was standing beside Evan, felt a chilling sense of death engulf him and his face turned pale white. On the other hand, Evan's expression did not change when he saw the beams of light coming towards him. His eyes glowed with a hazy white light as he activated temporal velocity, slowing the speed of the destructive beams to a crawl in his perception. Just as the beams of light were about to touch him and Morurok, the air trembled where the beams passed. The surrounding void energy shifted, and small void holes, the size of rice grains, appeared in their path. The small void holes released a powerful suction force, swallowing all the beams of light that were about to hit Evan and Morurok. But things didn't end there. The moment the beams of light, capable of killing even a normal peak rank 3 core evolvers, were swallowed by the void holes, the space above the heads of some rank 3 Eldritch horrors, who stood behind the rank 4-1, began to shake, and in the next second, swish, 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 dash dash dash, the tens of energy beams that were swallowed by the void holes shot out from above their heads. The Eldritch horrors behind the rank 4-1 were still being affected by the Event Horizon skill, making them sluggish. When the attack of the rank 4 Eldritch horror suddenly reappeared above them, they were unable to react in time. As a result, around 10 rank 3 Eldritch horrors were instantly killed, nearly wiping out all the rank 3 horrors in the swarm. From the time the rank 4 Eldritch horror attacked to the moment Evan redirected those attacks toward the rank 3 ones, barely 2 seconds had passed. Everything happened so quickly that no one had time to react. Thud, thud, dash 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 dash. Only when the bodies of the rank 3 Eldritch horrors dropped from the sky, thudding onto the ground and leaving the area still engulfed in pure void energy, did the rank 4 Eldritch horror, Morurok, and the others come back to their senses and looked at Evan with shocked expressions. Although Evan had killed many rank 3 Eldritch horrors with just a single attack, his expression remained unchanged, and while the rank 4 Eldritch horror was still distracted, he took advantage of the moment and activated his zone. As Evan used his zone, it merged with the field created by Event Horizon, turning the dark purple area pitch black and making the void energy in the surroundings even more powerful. At the same time, he didn't stop there and used another skill, Death Ring. As he used Death Ring, a swirling ring filled with the essence of death emerged from his body and merged with the pitch-black field created by his zone and Event Horizon. Death Ring, unique skill. When activated, a swirling black ring filled with the essence of death begins to rotate around you. All enemies within the bounds of the Death Ring are burned to fuel its power further. While inside the Death Ring, all enemies who are the same rank as you or 2 ranks lower than you will lose 5% of their maximum health each second. Enemies who are 3 or more ranks below you will lose 30% of their maximum health per second. Meanwhile, all enemies who are of a higher rank than you will lose 3% of their maximum health every second after entering the Death Ring. The Death Ring will not affect enemies who are 3 ranks higher than you. The power of all your shadow undeads increases by 1% for every 500 enemies that die within the Death Ring, with a maximum boost of 100%. The starting range of the Death Ring is 50 kilometers, and for every 1,000 enemies that die within the Death Ring, its range increases by 1 kilometer. The maximum range that the Death Ring can reach is 500 kilometers. Because of the effects of Death Ring, Event Horizon, and his zone, the entire area was now shrouded in darkness that released a strong aura of void and death, turning the hundreds of kilometers of the surrounding area into a forbidden zone. Amid the darkness, Evan's shadow moved and connected itself with the darkness, and shadows of different creatures began to come out of it. As the Eldritch horrors looked at the pitch-black area, they suddenly saw tens of thousands of purple burning eyes appear all over within the darkness, staring at them coldly. "Now, while my friends play with your minions, why don't you have a match with me?" Evan said after ordering his shadow undeads to handle the other Eldritch horrors, and the halberd of destruction appeared in his hands. Thanks for reading. Do vote with Power Stones if you like the story. 0_writer. Creator's thought. 1147 against the mid-level rank 4, Part 2. Amid the darkness created by the void energy and Death Ring, a black golden light flashed, and the halberd of destruction appeared in Evan's hand. A wave of destructive energy spread outward in all directions as after summoning the halberd of destruction, Evan simply stabbed in the rank 4 Eldritch horror's direction. The moment Evan stabbed, the surrounding void energy wrapped and twisted, a small void rift formed in front of him and the tip of the halberd of destruction passed through it. In front of the Eldritch horror, which was hundreds of meters away, a small void rift appeared out of nowhere, and the tip of a black golden halberd, brimming with endless destructive energy, emerged from it. The rank 4 Eldritch horror was startled when the halberd of destruction suddenly appeared in front of it and immediately waved its hundreds of tentacles, clashing with the halberd's tip. The moment the halberd's tip clashed with the tentacles, boom, tens of tentacles exploded into dark black blood mist. The surrounding void energy churned due to the powerful impact, and for a moment, the area around the rank 4 Eldritch horror was completely cleared of void energy. Roar! The Eldritch horror roared in pain as many of its tentacles were destroyed by the halberd. It used its remaining tentacles to try to grab the halberd emerging from the small void rift. However, before the Eldritch horror could seize the halberd, Evan pulled back his hand, causing the small void rift to disappear, making it impossible for the creature to snatch the weapon. At the same time, Evan controlled his zone, submerging the surroundings of the Eldritch horror in darkness once again. The Eldritch horror was extremely angry at being submerged in void energy once more. Because of Event Horizon, it had already expended a lot of energy to stop the invasion of the void energy to avoid losing its life force and world essence. Now, with Evan's zone layered over Event Horizon along with Death Ring, it felt extremely frustrated. Evan had integrated his Void Senses skill when creating his zone, making it a type that targeted the opponent's soul. Now that Evan had broken through to rank 3, his spiritual power had greatly increased, becoming comparable to that of a normal beginner-level rank 4 core evolver. Because the Eldritch horrors were mindless creatures with low intelligence, their spiritual power was quite weak compared to other beings of the same rank. Although the Eldritch horror Evan was fighting was a mid-level rank 4 creature, its spiritual power was almost the same as Evan's, making it very difficult for it to resist Evan's zone, which constantly targeted its soul. Not only that, but because of the conceptual energy of the soul mixed within his shadow energy, the power of Evan's zone was even greater when aimed at a target's soul. When the Eldritch horror felt its soul being targeted repeatedly by Evan's zone, it immediately lost its mind and burst out with its full strength. Boom! With a booming sound, a burst of boiling Eldritch energy erupted from its body, blowing away the surrounding void energy and breaking apart Evan's zone. Roar! With a defensive roar, the Eldritch horror's starfish-like body immediately surged forward the moment the void energy was blown away, appearing right in front of Evan. The creature's terrifying aura solidified the space around Evan, making it impossible for him to teleport away using the void energy. Hundreds of tentacles moved simultaneously and lashed out towards Evan like whips, intending to turn him into meat paste. Under the effect of temporal velocity, Evan looked at the hundreds of tentacles coming towards him with a serious expression. From the sharp wind blowing towards his face due to the moving tentacles, he was certain that even one of them hitting him would result in serious injury. Even though the situation looked dire, there wasn't a hint of fear on Evan's face. Looking at the hundreds of tentacles about to hit him, he took a deep breath and activated his skills, Starfall and Power Aura. Starfall, unique skill, upon activation, increases the user's strength stat in accordance with the amount of world essence consumed. For every 2 points of world essence, it increases the user's strength stat by 1 point. The higher the user increases their strength using Starfall, the greater the burden on their body. If the body of the user is not strong enough to handle the increased strength, there is a very high chance they will suffer serious injuries or their body might even explode. Power Aura. When activated, the user emits a Power Aura that increases strength by 10%. While Power Aura is active, the user's agility is reduced by 10%. Using Starfall, Evan consumed the full 2,000 points of world essence and increased his strength stat by 1,000 points, bringing it to 4,855 points. Under the effect of Power Aura, that 4,855 increased by another 485 points, making his strength stat reach 5,370, surpassing the 5,000 mark. Evan held the halberd of destruction with his right hand, and his hand muscles suddenly bulged as if they would burst at any moment. With the boost provided by both skills and the additional burst of power from the halberd of destruction, Evan took a step forward, poured his primordial shadow energy into the halberd without stopping, and slashed horizontally. WRRRRR. As Evan slashed with the halberd, the surrounding area emitted a strange sound as if the space within tens of kilometers was on the verge of collapsing. The pitch-black halberd, glowing with golden light of destruction, created a perfect giant arc and collided with hundreds of writhing tentacles in an instant. The moment the halberd and the tentacles clashed, time seemed to stop and everything fell silent. But the silence didn't last long because, an instant later, boom! With a deafening boom, the pitch-black area created by Event Horizon, the Void Zone, and Death Ring was blown apart. Space collapsed, laws were disordered, and waves of destruction swept outward in all directions. Roar! A painful roar echoed through the surroundings as black blood rained from the sky, and all the tentacles of the rank 4 Eldritch horror turned into a mist of blood. At the same time, the creature's giant body was thrown back hundreds of meters. Crack! Amid the pained roar of the Eldritch horror, the sound of bones cracking echoed as Evan's figure, with his arm completely disfigured, was sent flying backward at 10 times the speed of sound. Seeing the creature was also severely wounded, he gritted his teeth and forced his body to forcefully stop, worsening his injuries in the process. 13:10. After regaining control, Evan instantly stepped forward, appearing 10 meters above the Eldritch horror in an instant. In midair, he coughed up blood mixed with fragments of his internal organs and his aura sharply diminished. Despite being gravely injured and unable to control his body, Evan still raised his head in midair and looked at the Eldritch horror, who was roaring in pain after losing all its tentacles. Seeing the creature was also severely wounded, he gritted his teeth and forced his body to forcefully stop, worsening his injuries in the process. After regaining control, Evan instantly stepped forward, appearing 10 meters above the Eldritch horror in an instant. The moment Evan appeared above it, The Eldritch horror reacted immediately and lifted its head. But the moment it looked up, it was greeted by the sight of Evan's zone engulfing it once more, and two words reached its ears. Void Sealing. As soon as the Eldritch horror heard the words, a look of fear appeared on its face as it realized all of its powers were sealed by a strange energy, causing it to fall from the sky. As it plummeted, the creature suddenly noticed a golden glow filling the surroundings. It raised its head, and the moment it looked up, the hundreds of eyes on its starfish-like body widened in terror as it saw a massive halberd, glowing with golden light descending from the sky. Before the Eldritch horror could move to evade it, the halberd's tip tore through the air and struck it, turning the creature into a shooting star and nailing it to the ground with an earth-shattering boom. Chapter 1148 Cthoron, Part 1. Void Sealing was a skill Evan had comprehended when his understanding of the conceptual energy of the void had reached 20%. Using this skill, he had once saved himself in the tomb of the ancient when facing Momin in the secret place where Octavius was trapped. In the past, the void sealing skill had been very unstable, which was why Evan only used it when absolutely necessary. Upon activation, it would seal not only his enemy's powers but his own as well. However, now that Evan's understanding of void energy had reached the 75% mark, he had completely eliminated this side effect. Though this was no easy task, he achieved it by merging the void sealing skill with his zone, making it usable only through his zone as a medium. Evan wasn't too concerned by this limitation since it didn't hinder him much. In fact, it inspired him to further develop this ability, aiming to seal the soul of anyone who entered his zone. Currently, after activating void sealing, he could seal the powers of his target, both physical and spiritual. Everything would be sealed under the effect of void sealing. Although this effect was incredibly powerful, it consumed a massive amount of energy. Even with his current energy reserves, sealing the powers of a mid-level rank 4 core evolver, an opponent nearly an entire realm above him would drain him in less than 20 seconds. The higher the rank of his enemy, the more energy it took to maintain the seal. However, Evan had another idea. If he could develop this skill to seal only the soul instead of all the target's powers, it would not only reduce energy consumption but also make the skill more effective. Once the target's soul was sealed, severing its connection with the physical body, killing the enemy would become much easier and require far less energy. Because his zone was specifically designed to target souls, this development was not an impossible task, but it would take time. I have the soul severance skill, which has a similar effect, Evan thought aloud as he glanced at the grotesque body of the rank 4 Eldritch horror pinned to the ground by the halberd of destruction. But since all rank 4 core evolvers condense their law seals into their souls, it's very difficult to sever the connection between their bodies and souls with just a mere skill. If I want to break that connection in a rank 4 core evolver, I need something that can bypass the defense of the law seal. While lost in thought, Evan observed the struggling form of the Eldritch horror from the sky. His face was growing visibly paler as the toll of void sealing drained his energy reserves, but he didn't dare to rush toward the Eldritch horror because the creature was still struggling furiously. Despite its powers being sealed, the creature thrashed wildly, sending its black blood flying in all directions. Damn, the vitality of a rank 4 creature is no joke. Evan cursed inwardly and the halberd of destruction glowed with golden light, sending waves of destructive energy into the Eldritch horror's body, gradually weakening its resistance. Evan wanted to use his life-steal ability on the horror to enhance Gobu's rank, so he was careful not to attack recklessly after sealing the creature's powers as he was afraid of killing it because if he killed it, he wouldn't have the opportunity to use life-steal on it. The Eldritch horror's struggles lasted nearly 50 seconds. Even though Evan was continuously absorbing world essence from other Eldritch horrors under the effect of Event Horizon, his face had still turned ghostly white from the energy drain after using the void sealing skill for 50 seconds. So the moment Evan noticed the Eldritch horror's vitality was nearly depleted, he immediately dove down from the sky and without giving the creature any chance to recover, he activated his life-steal ability. A golden, ring-shaped field emerged from Evan's body and enveloped the mid-level rank 4 Eldritch horror. The moment the creature was engulfed by the golden field, a look of absolute terror crossed its grotesque face, and it began to thrash violently. However, with its body pinned to the ground by the halberd of destruction and its vitality nearly drained, the Eldritch horror was powerless and its body began to wither. In just a few minutes, the massive starfish-like creature's grotesque form had shriveled to a dry skeleton. A light gust of wind swept through the ground, reducing the brittle bones of the creature to powder and scattering them into the air. In the spot where the Eldritch horror's body once pinned, a gleaming black orb, pulsating with a powerful aura appeared. Evan grabbed the orb and without even glancing at it, tossed it into his shadow storage. He then raised his head, looking at the ongoing battle between his shadow undead and the remaining Eldritch horrors. Since most of the rank 3 Eldritch horrors had been wiped out by the energy beams fired by the rank 4 horror earlier, his shadow undeads found it easier to deal with the remaining creatures. Their side had a considerable number of rank 3 shadow undeads, providing a distinct advantage. Additionally, the effect of the Death Ring had caused many Eldritch horrors to perish without even putting up a fight, further empowering his shadow undeads. Given these advantages, when Evan glanced up to assess the battle, he saw that most of the Eldritch horrors were already dead, and even without any further effort from him, the fight would soon be over. Seeing that the situation was fully under control, he sighed and looked down at his severely disfigured arm. "It's going to take some time to heal this injury," he muttered to himself, as he turned his gaze to the bodies of the dead Eldritch horrors. The corpses of the horrors were disappearing in the same way as those of the other Eldritch creatures he had killed earlier. "I wonder why this world absorbs the bodies of everyone who dies here," he thought quietly, before dismissing the thought and focusing on recovering his energy. Earlier, he could have used the Void Territory ability to collect the bodies of the Eldritch horrors before the battle began, but with the presence of a mid-level rank 4 horror, it would have been extremely difficult to pull them into his Void Territory. Besides, he was already nearing the limit of his shadow save, so there was no point in wasting his energy on using Void Territory for now. An hour after Evan had killed the rank 4 Eldritch horror, his shadow undeads had finished off the remaining Eldritch horrors. Once the last of them had fallen, Evan wasted no time and immediately set off toward the Eldronthia Empire, as he wanted to know what was happening with the Eldritch horrors. Chapter 1149 Cthoron, Part 2. A day before Evan killed the rank 4 Eldritch horror, on a desolate star filled with black stones and jagged hills, the sound of gnawing echoed through the barren landscape. "Why do we have to guard this thing again?" asked a strange creature, its body resembling that of a humanoid ant, as it gnawed on the flesh of a nearly 100-meter-tall dead mammoth. Another creature, similarly insectoid but with the body of a grasshopper, also tore a chunk of meat from the mammoth with its sharp teeth, swallowing it whole. After devouring the flesh, it glanced at the ant-like humanoid creature and spoke in a low, grave tone. "Don't talk nonsense. If anyone hears you complaining, we might lose our heads." After speaking, it tore another chunk of flesh from the mammoth's body and spoke once again. "Besides, we got this delicious dish delivered to us without doing anything, so what's the matter even if we have to stay here for a few hundred years more?" Broodfiend, the creature with the body of a humanoid ant, snorted when he heard the words of Vorispon, the creature with the body of a grasshopper, but didn't refute what he said. Both of them were peak rank 3 creatures, while the aura around the giant dead mammoth was that of a mid-level rank 4. The flesh of a creature whose rank was far higher than theirs was very appealing to them. "Even though I don't mind staying here for the rest of my life if they give us delicious food like this once in a while, I still can't understand what's the point of us staying here. Didn't we stop paying attention to this thing thousands of years ago?" Broodfiend spoke after eating his fill as he looked at a complex altar made of strange stones at the end of a dark cave. "I don't know either, but I heard this order came from the higher-ups, so don't think about doing anything foolish." Vorispon shook his head when he heard Broodfiend and reminded him in a serious voice. "I know, I am not stupid enough to dig my own grave," Broodfiend said with a roll of his eyes, then suddenly remembered something. "By the way, have you heard the news that came from the Eclipse Expanse? Are you talking about that golden star that suddenly appeared there?" Vorispon raised an eyebrow when he heard Broodfiend. "Yes," Broodfiend said and looked around, as if confirming there was no one else besides them, before speaking in a low voice. "I don't know if it's true or not, but I heard people talking that the golden star is related to that person." "Related to that person?" Vorispon looked at Broodfiend in confusion, not understanding who he was talking about. The antennas on top of Broodfiend's head trembled when he saw the confused look on Vorispon's face, and he spoke in a speechless voice. "Don't you know about that person? The person who nearly destroyed the entire Origin Univ." Before Broodfiend could finish speaking, Vorispon covered his mouth and looked around with a look of fear on his face. After seeing there was no anomaly around them, he sighed in relief and spoke in an irritated voice. "Are you stupid? If you want to die, then go somewhere else, but don't drag me along with you." Broodfiend wanted to say it was Vorispon's fault for not recognizing the hint, but before he could speak, both of their expressions changed. They turned their heads and looked towards the dark cave where the altar was located and saw it flashing with deep red light. This shock crossed their faces and they immediately ran toward the cave, eager to see what was happening. Upon reaching the front of the cave, They tried to enter, but as soon as they attempted to approach the altar, a powerful force repelled them, nearly damaging their internal organs. Quick, contact Lord Cthoron. If something happens to this thing, we are as good as dead. Vorspan shouted urgently, staring at the cave with a look of fear. Broodfiend also showed fear when he heard Cthoron's name, and the antennas on top of his head began to shake. As the antennas vibrated, strange energy ripples emitted from them, extending into the void before disappearing. The antennas on top of Broodfiend's head continued to shake as he guided the energy ripples toward their target. While Broodfiend was attempting to contact Lord Cthoron, Vorspan once again approached the cave and tried to go in. However, just like before, the force pushed him back. Damn, I hope nothing's wrong with this thing, or we are done for. Vorspan muttered gloomily, glancing back at Broodfiend. 3 minutes passed in a blink of an eye and the red glow around the altar became even more terrifying. Just when the blood-red glow around the altar was becoming more and more powerful, Broodfiend suddenly raised his head and looked up. Vorspan also sensed something and raised his head in response. As both of them looked upward, they saw the space above them tearing apart, and a black-colored creature resembling a lion emerged from the crack in the void. The creature stood nearly 50 meters tall, radiating the aura of a peak rank 5 monster. Atop the lion-like beast sat a 2-meter-tall man, with a square-shaped head and eyes as round and large as baseballs. The moment Vorspan and Broodfiend laid eyes on the man, they immediately knelt down, their voices full of respect. Lord Cthoron, however, paid them no mind. His large, round eyes were fixed on the glowing altar inside the cave. Without a word, he disappeared from the back of the lion-like creature and reappeared in front of the cave's entrance. Upon reaching the cave, Cthoron took out a token from his storage ring and stepped forward. The instant his foot crossed the cave's threshold, the token in his hand glowed brightly, and the powerful force that had repelled Vorspan and Broodfiend vanished. Cthoron walked toward the altar and his eyes gleamed with a peculiar light as he observed the red glow surrounding it. With a smooth motion, he retrieved a green stone from his storage ring and tossed it into the center of the altar. The moment the green stone made contact with the altar, it disintegrated into dust, and the altar's glowing ceased. Once the light faded, the runes engraved on the altar began to shimmer softly and the next second, a holographic image of Emperor Velgath appeared above it. Chapter 1150 Colossal Creature. Once Cthoron entered the cave, a layer of mist enveloped the entrance, making it impossible for Vorspan and Broodfiend to see what was happening inside. Even after Cthoron had gone inside and they could no longer see him, both Vorspan and Broodfiend remained kneeling, not daring to stand. At the same time, they felt deep resentment as they glanced at the 50-meter-tall, rank 5 lion-like creature that had accompanied Cthoron. Once Cthoron had entered the cave, the lion-like creature walked toward the dead body of the giant mammoth and began to devour it. Watching the creature devour their meal, Broodfiend and Vorspan felt helpless, overwhelmed by their own weakness. Standing at just 2 meters tall, Broodfiend and Vorspan were dwarfed by the nearly 50-meter-tall lion-like creature, which consumed tens of tons of mammoth flesh with each bite, creating a vast puddle of deep red blood that spread 500 meters around it. About half an hour later, Cthoron emerged from the cave. By then, the lion-like creature had devoured the entire mammoth, leaving nothing, not even the bones for Broodfiend and Vorspan. When they saw Cthoron coming out, Broodfiend and Vorspan immediately lowered their heads, not daring to meet his gaze. Cthoron approached them, his square-shaped face expressionless, though his 2 round baseball-like eyes couldn't conceal the excitement within them. You two can leave, there is no need for you to remain here anymore, Cthoron said in an indifferent voice after coming to stand before Broodfiend and Vorspan. Broodfiend and Vorspan were stunned by Cthoron's words, but they dared not ask questions and nodded respectfully. Yes, Lord Cthoron, they said in unison before immediately flying away. While flying away, both of them glanced at the cave where the altar was located. From a distance, they could see that the altar inside the cave was now glowing with silver light, and the space around it was warping as if it were about to collapse at any moment. Even though they were far from the altar, they could still feel a kind of chaotic energy emanating from it, making their hearts race in fear. The energy was so intense that 2 words automatically surfaced in their minds: chaotic zone. Both of them were shocked when they realized the altar had something to do with the chaotic zone. Due to the destruction of the universal tree, the laws and order in that region were in complete disarray. Even for a beginner-level rank 6 core evolver like Cthoron, that area was extremely dangerous. If he wasn't careful, he could easily lose his life after entering that place. Realizing that the altar they had been guarding was connected to the chaotic zone, Broodfiend and Vorispawn broke out in cold sweat and thanked their mother insect that there was a protective force that surrounded the cave entrance, which had prevented them from entering. Had they accidentally gone into the cave and ended up in the chaotic zone, even with 100 lives, they wouldn't have been able to survive. Once Broodfiend and Vorispawn had disappeared from his sight, Cthoron took out a small bead the size of a human eyeball. As he injected energy into the bead, it began to glow, and the next second, a pleasant yet commanding voice filled with overwhelming spiritual power emerged from it. I heard everything that he said to you through our mind link. Cthoron showed no surprise when he heard these words and asked respectfully, "What should I do next, Mother?" The things that Velgath just mentioned align with the information that sent us, the voice responded. Since he is indeed in the process of regaining his powers and is currently only at rank 3, this is the best time to capture him. But you must not be careless when dealing with him. Take Grula and Zalga with you, and bring him here, alive. Yes, Mother, Cthoron replied in a solemn voice and looked toward the glowing altar. It will take about 5 days to open the space channel due to the interference from the chaotic zone. I will go there as soon as the channel opens. The voice on the other end of the bead responded softly, and the bead in Cthoron's hand ceased glowing. Cthoron grasped the now dormant bead and sent a message to someone using it. After sending the message, he walked back toward the cave and sat down in front of it, staring at the glowing altar with an expressionless face. The lion-like creature followed him and obediently sat beside him. Cthoron glanced at the creature sitting next to him, and a small smile appeared on his square-shaped face. We are about to do something monumental soon. Are you excited, Grula? Grula, the peak rank 5 lion-like creature, roared loudly upon hearing Cthoron, displaying its excitement. The smile on Cthoron's face widened even further as he heard the enthusiastic roar of his partner and turned his head once again towards the glowing altar. I wonder if he is as strong as people claim him to be. He muttered in a low voice and closed his baseball-like eyes. Somewhere in the vast, endless starry sky, a massive round object, the size of sun, floated silently. Suddenly, the enormous object trembled and an endless bloody aura, filled with chaos, erupted from it. As the object shook, its round shape began to change at a speed visible to the naked eye, soon transforming into a colossal monster. The creature had a body resembling that of a rhinoceros beetle, a head similar to an ant's, and a long tail, thousands of kilometers long, protruding from its back. The peaceful days are finally about to end, huh? The voice of the colossal creature echoed throughout the starry sky. Its voice was unmistakably the same as the one who had spoken to Cthoron earlier. Brrrrrzzz. With a loud buzzing sound, 4 transparent insect wings unfolded from the creature's back and the colossal being lightly flapped its wings. Boom, thanks for watching.